Good evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, February 12th, 2024. This is a regular meeting of the Minnetonka City Council. I will call this meeting to order. And then we have kind of a special event today. So we've got some Boy Scouts here from Troop 426. So I'm going to invite them come up to the podium. And one of the Boy Scouts is going to say a few words. And then the Boy Scouts are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we will continue with our meeting. So gentlemen, welcome. And yeah, you can just come on up here. And just come on up to the podium and then tell us who you are, and then we'll face the flag and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, Council. My name is Cole Udall. On behalf of my Troop 426, I'd like to thank you for having this opportunity today to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Very good. Well, thank you. Well, we will stand now, everyone, and face the flag, which is my right, and you gentlemen lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then Troop 426, if you'd like to gather around for a picture, I think the council will stay right here, and we'll get a picture of you all, and then we'll move on with our meeting. Come on, yeah, stand in front of us. Should we stand?
Yeah,
we can stand, okay. A few more? Wait, I see some people in the back. You good? All right. Oh. So, with the Pledge of Allegiance done, I will ask Ms. Englund to call roll, please.
Wilburn.
Here.
Calvert.
Here.
Romali.
Here.
Coakley.
Here.
Foster Bolton.
Here.
Wearsum.
Here. Next item is approval of the agenda, and we have an addendum. Mr. Funk.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I have one item for your consideration in tonight's addenda, and that is in front of you. And also it's been pushed out to your iLegislate earlier this afternoon. The item for your consideration is related to 14A, items concerning Minnetonka Flats at 5290 and 5300 Spring Lane, 5295 and 5329 County Road 101, and 5301 Tracy Lane Terrace. There was information that is being shared, additional information as it relates to the tree data that was processed by staff and submitted for your consideration. This all came after the distribution of the packet, so that concludes the one addendum for your consideration this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Councilor Calvert.
I just want to ask a question about the addendum. It says what you just read with no actual tree information, okay. Thank you.
So, Ms. Wishnack,
We'll make a report when we get to that item. Thank you.
okay, thank you. All right, so we've got the agenda and we've got an addendum. Is there a motion for approval? Councilor Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
And is there a second? Councilmember Romali.
I'll second the motion.
I've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Romali. Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Wilburn.
Yes.
Calvert.
Yes.
Romali.
Yes.
Coakley.
Yes.
Foster Bolton.
Yes.
Wearsum.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes, and they are the January 25th, 2024 special study session minutes, the January 29, 2024 regular meeting minutes, and the January 17th, 2024 special study session minutes. And I will note that when I chatted with Mr. Funk, I had a couple of little typo things that I shared with him, and they were corrected. So with that, is there a motion? Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I make the motion to approve the January 25th, 2024 special study session minutes, the January 29th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, and the January 17th, 2024 special study session minutes with the changes mentioned by the mayor.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Foster Bolton. Ms. England, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romaley,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is special matters, and 6A is the strategic profile quarter 4 and end of year report. I think we've seen some of this before, but I know that Mr. Funk has a presentation. So Mr. Funk.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Sorry about that. Let me start over. I would like to say rookie mistake, but it wasn't. Sorry about my microphone. Excuse me. As it relates to the strategic profile, we do have a PowerPoint presentation here for you this evening. And mainly my comments are for those that are watching or listening or here present. I know, Council, you've seen this information before. And really tonight's presentation is really highlighting 2023 and really taking a look at our year in review in terms of our activity, the body of work that has been done by the City Council and by our staff. As we all know, it's a collective work by our team, both collaborative in nature between staff and our council and our community on really advancing issues that are important to the city. And again, those have been identified in our strategic profile. I'm going to get a little more into the data, but again, I do want to just spend just a minute teeing it up, and that is with our strategic profile, just the importance of this document. Again, for those that are watching and listening, the city spends a great deal of time in our planning efforts, and we do that to be forward thinking, that we can control our own destiny, and that we have purpose behind what we do here at the city. And part of this purpose is really identifying where we're going in the next 3 to 5 years. And so the strategic plan that we're about to show you was developed a couple years ago. So we're generally on year 4 of our strategic plan. I will end the conversation tonight here in a few minutes just with reminding you on next steps and what our next rendition will look like. But we are reporting on 2023. And so with that, I'd like to go to the first page of the PowerPoint. Really want to start with the mission, vision, and values. And these are the first few slides of our presentation tonight because it really starts with our mission. Because without a strong mission, that also leaves us somewhat rudderless. And as an organization, we do spend that time really ensuring that taking an inventory of where we are today and then understanding where we're going as a community. So with our mission statement, that is to provide quality public services while striving to preserve and enhance the distinctive character to make Minnetonka a special place for everyone. Along with that, we have our vision statement. Our vision is who we are really destined to be. And this is that visionary forward-looking statement. And it says that Minnetonka is an inclusive community committed to excellence where all residents, workers, and visitors are welcome in a beautiful, sustainable place supported by quality, dependable city services. We do then have related value propositions. I won't spend my time reading through all those on the next slide. I'll really just kind of highlight the bolded words that are in these bullet points. And really with our guiding principles, it really talks about this is how we go about our work, that we're a beautiful, sustainable, and healthy environment, that we deliver excellent public services and provide affordable opportunities. We also ethically uphold community trust through proactive, inclusive public engagement and are transparent in our operations. And we also want to make sure that we're nimble. We all know that at times government can those wheels can turn slowly, but we also need to be nimble. And so really making sure that we are on the cusp of innovation and making sure that we are able to adapt to the changing environment, as we know change has been inevitable the last couple of years. So with that, moving into the strategic profile itself, again, our plan is considered a 3-level plan. And when we talk about our strategic profile, I'll really just spend tonight talking about our 6 strategic priorities. That is the hallmark, the foundation of what our goals are for 2023. Those 6 strategic priorities are supported by 21 key strategies. And then we operationalize all of that work through very specific and detailed action steps. In 2023, there were a little over 90 action steps. And then we also measure our success. So to complement not only all of the words in our document, we also generate data. And government is known to have a lot of data. We have lots of data, but then we really are specific into which data we track. And for our strategic profile, we use 69 performance measures, or metrics, as we also call them, to really track our performance and using those as benchmarks against our performance. And that's really how we use these tools for accountability. And that's really the benchmark and hallmark also of our strategic plan, and how we roll this out, the action steps that we perform on the city's behalf and on the council's behalf, and then really measuring that success. So with that, I want to just spend a few minutes talking about, again, those 6 strategic priorities. What's listed on this page are those 6: financial strength and operational excellence. And each of these have a team leader, and in this team is headed by Darren Nelson, our finance director. Safe and healthy community is the second pillar, which is led by Scott Borboom, our police chief. Sustainability and natural environment is Leslie Yetka, our natural resources manager. Livable and well-planned development is Julie Wishnak, our community development director. Infrastructure and asset management is Will Manchester, who is our public works director. And then last is our community inclusiveness, which is Jace Alexander, our senior diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. So with those team leads, and I just want to thank them and take a minute just to thank them, because it is a truly, I use the word team effort again. I know that's really an important element of who we are here at the city, is really collaborative and teamwork. And without these team leads, it would be difficult to really make this body of work happen. We involve a number of staff members, so it's really a top-down, bottom-up approach to our strategic planning, where we do involve many of our staff in framing up the work that we do every year. And it's really a testament to our 6 team leads that work together and work with myself, our assistant city manager, Miranda Dahman, Sarissa Falk, our also project lead on this, as we really shape this up for reporting tonight. Now, as for the public, they know we don't spend this much time throughout the year going through the results of our strategic plan. You do get this, council, as you know, quarterly. So after the quarters 1, 2, and 3, you do receive quarterly updates. Again, that's our way of showing and demonstrating that quarterly progress. And then really tonight, I'll spend the next 10 minutes or so highlighting those 2023 more high-level year-end results. So with that, as you look at the overall progress, again, we have those 6 pillars and 21 key strategies. So if you're taking a step back and look at a complete snapshot of the city's body of work this last year, it's all color-coded. And at one of our last slides, I'll show you a little bit more about the color coding. But the blue in this overall summary represents that roughly 75% of our body of work was completed this last year. And still, as we ended the year 2023 in December, we were on track with 22%. And of course, some of those other colors represent the disruption, just things that other priorities come into play. Perhaps there's a funding mechanism issue. So there's just different representations as to why something might have been slowed up. And that's very common. Ideally, yes, we would be at 100%. But the reality is, when you work through strategic plans, anytime that we can get over 75% complete is really a good year. On the right side of that graph, it shows 88% progress. So it's measured a couple different ways. So while we completed 74 or 75%, the progress as we get, it measures how close we are to really getting to that 100% completion. So really, when we take a step back, another way of looking at it is we really had a really solid year in terms of our progress, and we're happy to, again, continue to report through these next few slides of what that looks like. Again, as I work through the 6 pillars, the first one is financial strength and operational excellence, some of the highlights. And again, for council, you heard this presentation from staff and our team leads recently in a study session. I'll quickly run through these bullet points again for those that have not seen this before. One is implemented an agenda management application. So that's our legislate. We also executed a short-term operating plan for the Marsh, and just the short timelines in between deciding to purchase the property and then reopening its doors. The completion of the Ridgedale Commons and Crane Lake Preserve, and so that was an exciting finish to the park in the Ridgedale Commons area. And then also, what's core to us as a city is our AAA bond rating. So really benchmarking ourselves every year to ensure that we maintain that AAA bond rating for all the reasons that we've spoken of in terms of why that's important. And then really, when it comes to the budget, making sure that it aligns with our strategic profile. Our budget is over $100 million, and so we do spend considerable time with our capital improvement plan, economic improvement plan, and other plans in the city to ensure that our budget does align with our strategic profile, and that and the reason for that alignment is really it's about having the deliberateness behind what we're doing. Some performance metrics, and again, I won't spend a great deal of time looking at and spelling out all of the performance metrics because we have 68 of them. I'm really just highlighting a couple metrics on each of those. This really looks at a whole gamut from our quality of water and sewer services that we're providing, estimating our future tax levy because we are being futuristic in our planning efforts and understanding what future levies and budgets look like, and then also the quality of our recreational programs and services. So those are questions we asked in our community survey. We measure our success based on feedback, and we do like to point out these as a way to gauge how effective we are in delivering those services. Moving on then to the next slide, which is safe and healthy community. A couple of highlights noting in this pillar is the establishment of our police cadet program. Mayor and council, you know we recently got some exposure on one of our cadets as they have now entered the program, and that program has been very successful since its launch. We've had also a number of data portal enhancements, so I'll point those out in a couple slides, again, just in terms of our transparency center and the data that we offer to residents, where residents can go to our website. Our chief police, Mr. Borboom, has enhanced the data that residents can see on our website, real-time crime data and all the mapping features that we have available for residents. We've also then increased our community engagement efforts, just really the work that has been done by public safety, both police and fire, and the hundreds of events that they're out and about in the community and having those touch points with our community members. Also, this last year, we had our fire department staffing strategy and staffing study, and that was really the public safety master plan, both with police and fire. So that was done also this last year in 2023. And then I already noted, but with safe and healthy community, just with the successful acquisition and then the reopening of the marsh. In terms of some performance metrics, so this is really just a snapshot of the data collection system that you see on our website. It's in our portal, so any resident can do a lot of different searching with the features in this website. It's very interactive, different ways to search data, look at crime hotspots, if you will. It can be broken down by gender, by race, reasons for involvement, and so there's lots of data just in terms of the interactions that police have with our community. I would just note that we're one of few cities that puts out data like we do. We're proud of that fact because we do want our residents to know what it's like with our police department, what's happening in our city, and we do have that information readily available. Moving on is sustainability and natural environment. Some of the highlights there is, and this is continuing with the climate action and adaptation plan that started in 2023, and we're looking to wrap up that project in 2024. We also then, as a city, adopted the citywide Atlas 14 flood vulnerability model and map. That was an extensive project undertaken by our engineering staff in 2023, and council that came before you through a lot of public engagement efforts as well, and that was updated. We also then started the Purgatory Park and Hillaway Park restoration and maintenance planning. And we're also, as you know, working in the midst of our Purgatory Park master planning. So a lot of park matters under attention this last year. And then moving on with the stormwater BMP inventory. Don't ask what BMP is, but Will Manchester is here to help me with that one. But we did assessments in our maintenance programming really through a lot of our stormwater efforts. As we know, natural environment, stormwater efforts, how we manage stormwater is very significant in the city and a compliment to our staff in updating that program. And then last, also we promoted the city's water conservation grant program. Again, our goal is to reduce water consumption, and so we do educational efforts, and we do have programs in place, systems in place to reduce our water consumption in the city. Moving on then to some of the performance metrics. Trees planted, it's always a good one that we monitor. That is not for the entire city, because if you were to add up trees in the entire city, both from public and private tree plantings. They would be, I think, in excess of 1,000. These are more symbolic of, the numbers represented are more symbolic of the public tree plantings, so the work that's done by the city on some of our public properties. We also then track that residential per capita water use. And so really we gauge to see how well our programs are doing. We're trying to get those water consumption down, just knowing the scarce water resources that we have. And then switching gears on the right side, lower right side of that graph is the solar installations. And so part of our goal as a city is to work with residents and through our programs with private solar installations on private property. So we do track those as well. Moving on to livable and well-planned development, some of the highlights are the Opus area. It goes without saying, Mayor and Council, just the work that the city has done in terms of preparing for Opus and the work that was done in terms of securing bonding dollars this last year that will continue in 2024. The housing rental registration program was approved, and that project is initiated here this last few weeks, and so that is underway in 2024. And certainly, we always point out inspections, just in terms of the health inspectors visiting over 700 facilities, addressing 500 complaints in the community. The building inspectors conducted over 15,000 inspections of projects this year, as it relates to about 8,000 permits. So certainly active. Some communities have not seen the type of growth and type of development that Minnetonka has seen. We're proud of that fact that we have a community that is seen as a place to invest. And so that is a really good sign that we're remaining strong, even though the economy and interest rates sometimes suggest otherwise. And then in terms of business outreach, we did elevate our program to the open to business, and individual company outreaches have taken a priority. So we have, as a staff, with Ms. Wishnak and our community development team, doing a lot more engagement with our business community this last year. And then also sustainability was a big priority under this category, where we have started work on the climate action and adaptation plan. I already noted that, but that does also fall under this umbrella with the livable and well-planned development. Some of the performance metrics, and there's a number of them again, but I'll just really highlight what's out on our website. This is a interactive portal for housing units. This is when I say interactive, different ways you can capture data. I won't walk through all those here this evening, but what this graph illustrates from a high-level perspective without really filtering a lot of the data is that in Minnetonka we have 9,099 total rental units. About a third of those are affordable at 3,362. And then across the bottom of that dashboard, it does show the different units based on AMI. So for 30, I think it's 30, 50, 60 and 80% AMI, so it does show those. And again, those are very clickable in different ways you can extract the data. On the map, you'll see those orange colored boxes. Those are ways that anyone can go on our website, click on any of those boxes and gain information on that particular property in terms of the number of units, if there's any affordability, and other property information. Moving on with infrastructure and asset management, some of the highlights, and I won't read through all the words on this slide either, but certainly we installed electric EV chargers on site here at our city campus. Moving on, we with a lot of different maintenance projects ranging from the Ridgedale Water Tower rehab. We were looking at our water meter replacement pilot project, and there are certainly some rehabilitation efforts at Williston, Opus, and our Birch lift station. So not glamorous work that the public always sees, but certainly very important work as it relates to our infrastructure. Maintaining the aging infrastructure has been a focus of the city, and we do note that as a major highlight this last year. I know it goes without saying that residents can expect their water and use the sewer system, and it's meant to be without much headache. And that's what our goal is at the city, is to make sure that people are using our infrastructure in a way that's efficient, it's effective, and especially with an aging infrastructure, we know that's been a concern with some of our neighboring communities. Moving on, in 2023, while it doesn't feel like it right now with the weather, this last year we had our third highest snowfall season for the record in the Twin Cities. So again, a compliment to our staff that 94% of our residents during the survey still compliment our services as good or excellent. So just given the tough winter we had last year, it's certainly noteworthy and a compliment to our staff for our snow removal efforts. We also had a number of trail connections that are noted there and trail improvement projects. And then lastly, power line restoration and easement acquisition for the Hopkins Cross Road Trail project. as we know it's a big project coming up, and really that groundwork has begun. Some of the performance metric, number of new miles constructed. We do hear from residents about trails and sidewalks, and we do track how many new miles are constructed each year. That way we're measuring against ourselves and understanding that we are investing in our trails. And then also, as I already noted with the survey, with snow plowing being a significant indicator in terms of our performance. Last is community inclusiveness. A couple of the highlights noted there is we did hire a senior diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator. The council, you approved the creation of the DEI commission, and we recently appointed our newest members to serve on that commission, and we're getting that launched and ready for our first meeting coming up. I believe that's going to be March that we're shooting for. We also then participated for the first time in the Racial Equity Dividends Index study, which is created by the Center for Economic Inclusion. And so you heard Jace Alexander, our Senior Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Coordinator, his presentation recently at the City Council. More of this will be coming forward, we expect, in 2024. And then certainly we highlight a number of our internal efforts. We as a city internally work on our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, just from training. We have equity toolkits and a lot of the other practices that we're installing here at the city. A couple of the highlights really kind of reflect around some demographics, and then again some survey questions regarding how what the community perceives in terms of the city and our inclusiveness rankings, really to highlight us on those last metrics. So to wrap things up, this is our community dashboard. So this is a snapshot. So when people do go to our website, it is layered with information. And Council, you've seen our previous quarterly reports. They tend to be 30 plus pages. So there's a lot of detail. I'm trying to spend about 20 minutes here tonight going through a lot of different detail, mainly just leaving you with the message and our residents with the message that we were very successful this last year. Going to our community dashboard, those colors are seen here and do play out. So with that green blue is really what residents can be looking for in terms of progress and success in each of those 6 pillars. Those are all clickable again, and if you go to the next slide, if a resident clicks on any of these, it does drill down to further information. There's more charts, there's more graphs, there's the 60 plus metrics that we have on our website. So certainly a lot of information that we share with our community in terms of our progress. And I do note that on the right side of that graph, we are recognized as a leader in terms of strategic planning. I'm very proud of that as your city manager and the work that we do as a staff, working with you, council, on setting up our strategic plan, working through our action steps, and then delivering on those. And we've been recognized by Invisio, who is our software behind all of the work that you see here tonight. Our software provider knows that we're really good at strategic planning, and they are quick to showcase us in the work that we do. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'll end there and ask if you have any questions. Otherwise, I turn back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Council, any questions? Councilor Calvert.
I just have one quick one, and I apologize for not asking you about it when we spoke this morning, and that is on page 3. And I mean, it's elsewhere. It was on the slide that you were just showing of the strategic profile. There were some disruptions. So there's red in strategic priority number 1, and there was something discontinued in strategic priority number 6. And I'm sorry, I should have asked, but I didn't. So I'm asking now what it was in, especially on strategic priority number 1.
And Mayor Wiersum, Councilmember Calvert, let me do some research and get back to you on that specific disruption. From a high-level perspective, usually what causes a disruption, and I allude to it a little bit, is if there's another priority that takes place. For example, we have, as I noted earlier, 90-plus action steps. So sometimes it can be a new priority takes place, for example, with our ERP system. So with our ERP system this last year, a lot of staff dedication is going to that project. It is taking considerable more time and effort than we anticipated. We always anticipate they're going to take a lot more time, but it's taking even more than that. So it's things like that where with our ERP, so many staff resources get drawn to one project, and then we
I was wondering if it was the ERP migration, but yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions? You know, I'm going to ask one. I'm going to ask it of Mr. Manchester. BMP. If I don't know the acronym, I want to know, and Mike mentioned it, so here we go.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it's best management practice, so it's a
Very-
term used to,
Very good.
highlight erosion control. type
And I know what
measures.
that means. All right, that's good. And then, I just want to comment briefly. I really appreciate that we do this. And sometimes when we go through all the detail in the study session and so forth, it seems a little tedious. But it's really important that we have a staff that sets objectives and holds themselves accountable to it, and they are accountable to us. And so these measures, where we are really looking at the work that's being done and measuring it and fessing up when we're not exactly where we want to be, but also noting all the things that we accomplish is really important. I had a boss one time who said, "You are what you measure." And I really believe that. If it's important, you measure it. And I think that this speaks to that. So I just wanted to add that summary comment, and I appreciate having these updates quarterly. And I think we're in a really good spot in terms of 2023, and I look forward to the same rigor in 2024. So thank you. So the next item is then reports from, oops.
Do we have to make a motion to accept that report?
Do we have is there a motion? I apologize. All right, then would somebody like to make that motion? Councilor Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to, first of all, thank staff for all their hard work. It's a great report, and it's just a great system, and it really is helpful. So, and I'd like to make the motion to accept the strategic profile quarter four and end of year report.
And Councilmember Wilburn?
And I will second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Wilburn. Ms. England, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romalee,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsum.
Yes, motion carries. And thank you, Councilmember Calvert, for keeping me on task. Next item is reports from city manager and council members, and Mr. Funk.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I guess you get me twice in a row. Couple things for you this evening. One, I just want to mention a chamber update. As you know, we do have businesses that are represented by two different chambers here in the city of Minnetonka. One is the Greater Wayzata Area Chamber of Commerce, and the other is the Minneapolis Regional Chamber. So if you're one of our 2,200 businesses in the city, you can join either one of those. Our goal here this last year and going even into 2024 from a staff level is to really continue to strengthen those partnerships. One thing I want to mention this evening for you is that both the Greater Wayzata Area Chamber of Commerce and the Minneapolis Regional Chamber is excited to partner with the city on new facility to facilitate new programming for 2024. The programming that you'll see coming out being advertised is called the Minnetonka Business Council. So both of these chambers are hosting some meetings, and the purpose of these business council type meetings is to really strengthen the ties between the city Minnetonka business leaders, the city, to foster a thriving and prosperous business community now and into the future. It's also an opportunity to connect City Hall with our local leaders, and we do have our newsletter, and Julie Wishnack, our Community Development Director, and her team are doing business visits. I just spoke of that in my last report. We're really using these as opportunities to connect face-to-face with our business community. With the Greater Wayzata Area Chamber of Commerce, the Minnetonka Business Council meetings will be held on March 27th, May 29th, September 25th, and November 20th of this year. The Minneapolis Regional Chamber, they're having their business council meetings on March 12th, May 7th, and November 14th. There'll be a lot more advertising and promotion of these events as they're coming out. We're really excited to just share with you some of the work that staff has been doing with our chamber, meeting with them here in the last couple of months, really looking at as these really good opportunities to, again, connect with our businesses through these different settings. Next thing I want to mention is Kids Fest. This last week, we had 2,800 participants, so it was really great to see. So regardless of the warmer weather, everyone that came had a great time dancing, playing bingo with our Minnetonka Police Department, making treats and s'mores and other fun things. So really big shout out to all of our volunteers and our vendors who made that day possible. And certainly a big thanks to our staff for pulling it all together. Also want to mention the Winters Farmer Market ended this past Saturday, February 10th. This was the final of 3 markets for the season. These have been all very well attended, and I also want to thank the vendors who worked with Mr. O'Day and our rec staff for these events. And also want to just mention those that come to the farmers market. So we wouldn't be hosting these if we didn't have participants. So big thank you to all sorts of community who sees these as community events and come to these on our Saturdays. We'll be preparing for Summer's Farmers Market right around the corner. Lastly, I just want to mention to council just to hold the date for the annual State of the City. So the Mayor Wiersum is working with city staff. It's being planned for March 15th from 11:30 to 1 o'clock p.m. at the Marsh, and then more details will be coming out soon. We look forward to hosting that event coming up here in roughly about 6 weeks. And then last, council, I know you know this, but I do just want to publicly say that Sergeant Ryan Piper passed away yesterday after a courageous battle with cancer. His dedication to duty, his unwavering commitment to excellence, and the respect he commanded amongst his peers really left an indelible mark on our department. As we mourn the loss for Sergeant Piper, let us also remember the impact he had on the lives and those around him. His memory will serve as a source of strength and inspiration to all of us, and his legacy will continue to resonate within our department for years to come. And so during this difficult time, really let us all come together to offer our support and condolences to Ryan's family, his friends and colleagues. May his memory be a blessing and a source of comfort to all that knew him. So with that, Mayor and Council, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Council, any reports? Councilor Calvert.
I will try to keep it very short, and I just want to say to all the loved ones, colleagues, and friends of Sergeant Piper, you are in my thoughts, and I was very sad to hear the news. I also just wanted to mention that this weekend was an event sponsored by the League of Minnesota Cities. It was a learning opportunity for experienced and new council members, and we had an opportunity to take a pretty deep dive on a variety of issues and challenges that face cities right now. So just things that would help build our community, things like conflict resolution, crisis communication, very inclusive ways of addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I very much enjoyed all of the presentations. And also just having a roundtable conversation about kind of just the challenges of being on the council, and there are a lot of hot button issues internationally, nationally, and always locally. And I thought, it's always good to hear what other cities are facing and how they deal with it. And so it just gets me to thinking we're very lucky to live in our city with a collegial council, and there are some really controversial issues. Maybe even one will be on the agenda tonight. But I just want to remind people that our boards and commissions are volunteers. We are not volunteers. We are elected officials, but we don't exactly get rich at this. And we have very hardworking staff. And you might notice that they're sitting here after regular working hours. And so I just want to encourage everyone to understand that we may have different points of view and different ways of looking at things, but we all want the same thing for our city, which is the very best. And so when we're talking about things that we might disagree with people in the room about, I just want to encourage people to maintain decorum, and it has nothing to do with anything necessarily that we're discussing tonight, but just as a general rule that lack of decorum is something that is becoming an increasing challenge across the country at every level of government. And so when you come here to speak and when we speak to you, I hope that there is mutual respect. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Councilor Calvert. Other reports? Anyone? Councilor Coakley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone about this Thursday that we're having the Sounds of Blackness come to the City Hall to perform, and we're going to have a food vendor there as well to celebrate Black History Month. In addition to I received a couple text messages and phone calls mentioning that the tickets were really gone pretty fast and people wasn't able to get access to them, and just wanted to let everybody know that we are excited about the events that's happening on Thursday, and I'm sorry that everyone could not get tickets. We only had so many tickets available, and this is our first time doing an event like this, and I'm sure with all the excitement we will probably do something in the future. And I just say just keep a lookout, and hopefully next time you'll be able to get a ticket. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Coakley. Anyone else? Councilmember Romali.
Yes, just echoing Councilmember Calvert regarding condolences to the family of our deceased colleague. Also, thanks to the city for that wonderful report that condensed a lot of great information into a very succinct presentation. I know as a new council member, for me, it's been a revelation to see the many, many, many invisible hands that go into the work of making this city run as well as it does. I too was at the actually 2 workshops over the last week, one on municipal finance, the other one for the newbie version of the League of Minnesota Cities seminar that Councilmember Calvert was also at. And again, it was a wonderful opportunity to learn from experts, also to meet staff and other city council members from around the state, which once again made me very grateful for the opportunity not only to learn from them, but also to kind of understand their problems and also be grateful for the benefits that we have living here in Minnetonka. Also, one final kudos to Sarah Westy, Kelly O'Day, and the staff for recreation. I was at the Kids Fest, and it was a rockin' time, especially the kids' DJ room. And I think a really great time was had by all. Again, kudos to the staff who came in on a Sunday, including firefighters, other staff, to be at this event. And we even got, I think, a KSTP interview out of it with one of our firefighters. And by the way, if you are interested in being on a paid on-call firefighter, I think they're in need. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Romali. Anyone else? Councilmember Wilburn.
Just really quickly, also I'd echo sharing condolences with the family and fellow colleagues of our fallen officer. I was at those workshops too, but Councilmember Coakley reminded me of something. So for people who tried to get tickets and were not able to, I believe the event will be live streamed. So if you go to the city website, you should be able to find live stream information and still be able to watch the concert. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilburn. Anyone else?
Well, I feel like
You don't have
I was
to feel
there
that
too.
way. Great.
And it was great. And I also was really sorry to hear about the fallen officer. And you know, while I might as well talk about a little bit about public safety, it also includes pedestrians. And 4 weeks ago, I was in the crosswalk. This was in Hopkins, not in Minnetonka, but I was hit by a car in the crosswalk on a green light. And public safety includes, you know, people walking, and we're in Minnetonka and Hopkins too want to be more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. I just want to remind everyone to keep an eye out for pedestrians. I mean, it's been a lot worse than I had anticipated. It's trauma to get hit by a car. So just be mindful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Foster Bolton. Did I skip anybody? All right. I've got a couple of things I wanted to mention. I attended a meeting of the Regional Council of Mayors today, and it was a very interesting meeting. And we had the climatologist from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and his presentation was fascinating. And it was about climate and weather, and they're not the same thing. But it was really fascinating about some of the changes we can anticipate with a changing climate, some of the changes that have not occurred yet but will, some of the changes that are slowing down because of what, I mean, it was just a very fascinating presentation. And then we also had a presentation on, recent federal legislation that makes money available to cities and to local governments for climate adaptation. And at our most recent study session, we reviewed a draft of of the Minnetonka Climate and Adaptation Plan. And that is available on the city website, and I would urge you to take a look at that, because there is an opportunity to look at that and weigh in, I believe. And we are interested in comments from our residents, but it also talks about things that we as residents can do to make our homes and our vehicles and things less impactful to the environment and more user-friendly. And some of those changes are pretty significant. Exchanging your furnace for a heat pump, for example, is one. Pretty expensive deal. And I think that there's a lot of federal money out there for those types of changes. But if we are going to slow climate change down, we have to do some big things. And so this was a very, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but this was a very interesting set of presentations. I will get the slides that were presented, and I will share them with staff and have them get them out to council members and anyone else, frankly, who is interested. But there's some pretty interesting things out there that are going to help people be more climate ready, if you will, because the climate is changing, and that's a reality, and there are things that can be done to help slow down those climate impacts. So I thought that was helpful. I want to also extend my sincere condolences to Sergeant Piper's family and to to the entire community and to our staff. Minnetonka does community policing. So our police officers and our sergeants know a lot of people in the community. And the city of Minnetonka is not a huge organization. I think we've got about 250 full-time employees and probably another 200 or 300 part-time employees. But we're really kind of like a mid-sized company. And we lost a key person in our management of our city. And it's a big loss. And I just want to extend condolences to the entire city staff, to Sergeant Piper's family, and this is a big deal for our city. So I think we're all hurting a little bit. And then I was going to make one small plug that Mr. Funk omitted. The state of the city is March 15th, but we want people to come, and oh, by the way, there is free food. And that usually, in my experience, that usually helps bring the numbers in. So I just wanted to mention that because he neglected to comment on that. So, and it's at the Marsh. So please, and we've got a totally different, very different format, very strong business emphasis this year. So more to come on that, but that's March 15th at 11:30 a.m. and there is free food. You can quote me on that. So that is all the reports from council members tonight. Item 8 is citizens wishing to discuss matters not on the agenda. And this is an open mic opportunity. And if you have a report that you would like to make tonight, please come forward, state your name and address, and make your report. And then we will not take any action. This is just an information item that if there is action required, we'll turn it over to staff and they will report to me. But please, report to us. But please come forward, state your name and address, and please make your report. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm pleased to be here, Mayor and Council. Diana Houston, 12201 Minnetonka Boulevard. We have a brief PowerPoint presentation.
Excellent.
And so Friends of Minnetonka Parks, known as FOMP, F-O-M-P, 501c3 nonprofit organization, and my presentation tonight is a look back on 2023, a year in review, and also look at 2024 goals. We're a very young organization formed in 2021, and we have a growing base of volunteers dedicated to park restoration using science-based methods and best practices. We work closely with city staff to implement restoration plans consistent with Natural Resources Master Plan. FOM focuses on restoration, education, and public outreach, along with continually expanding our volunteer base. And you can see we can use some nifty tools in the parks that make our work a little easier so we can accomplish more. Our 2023 initiatives, we have 3 of them that we did. And so the first one was science-based natural resources restoration. And we focused on restoring 12 parks in the city, guided by the Natural Resources Master Plan and the Park Master Planning process. And as noted on the map, the 12 parks are circled in the brown. The second initiative, collaborate with city and staff officials. FOMP volunteers and park leaders meet monthly with city staff in our park stewardship meetings to foster cooperation, communication, and collaboration, along with joint problem solving, in addition to other means of engagement. The third initiative continued to grow outreach and education efforts, included many activities, included a sold-out public education event, Oaks, Fire and Climate Change, tabling at the farmers market, a wealth of resources, our website, social media, newsletter, educational materials, and also further development of volunteer skills. This slide by the numbers shows the impact of our 100% volunteer organization. And we plan to exceed these achievements in 2024. I think I've really noticed the big number up there, almost 1,600 hours volunteer restoration. That's a lot of hours, and you can see it in the parks. So, 2024. We've already started a process to educate and train volunteers beyond the basics of restoration. And so restoration involves a lot more than removal. It also includes working with city staff, broader knowledge of what's good and not so good in the parks, site plans, and one of the most fun activities I especially enjoy, which is seeding cleared areas after all of your hard work. We've already started the work on recruiting new volunteers and defining what does it mean to be a FOMP member. And we also plan to grow our donor base. Again, we're a 501c3. Growing our reserve will be used to front money for larger restoration projects and also apply for grants. And our donor button is on our website and also on our Facebook page. So our website is mtkaparks.org. You can contact us at mtkaparks@gmail.com. And also our full annual report is on our website. Finally, I would like to thank you, the City Council. I'd like to thank the Park Board and also all the city staff. You all are a large part of the successes we celebrate. So thank you for your time tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Houston, and thank you for the good work that the Friends of Minnetonka Parks volunteers do. That is a big number of hours, and I've seen the many improvements you've made in our parks. So thank you so much for your work. It is
You're
very
very
important and very much appreciated.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Kevin Ringhofer. I live at 2200 Indian Road West in Minnetonka. And in addition to some of the things I do in terms of working on affordable home ownership and other racial and justice and economic justice issues that I work with a few different organizations, I'm also part of an organization called Smart Approaches to Marijuana, Minnesota. And as I watched the council and staff work on things in the last study session that related to that, I want to commend you for your diligent work on that. But I also want to encourage you, and I don't know if you're getting it, but to reach out to other organizations that can provide the help. I mean, there's a whole field of prevention science that has evolved quite a bit over the last 20 or 30 years, looking at what we do in the area of smoking prevention, reducing alcohol use, keeping young people safe. And there's a lot to be gleaned, I think, from that as we kind of apply it to cannabis. I mean, there's, three things that we look at. One is with smoking, it's, both addictive, and you have the smoking issues and secondhand smoke issues. With alcohol, you have the intoxication issues, as you had pointed out, Mayor, and also the addiction issues. Well, with cannabis, we're going to have all three of those things. And I think there's opportunities at times to just maybe reframe it a little bit. And is this something that we're looking at that's more related to tobacco, or is it more related to alcohol? And can we rely on some of the things that we've learned in those fields and apply it to cannabis as well, rather than do it? The other thing is reaching out. I don't know if you're getting that kind of help, but what I've found in doing this work is that the voices that are proponents of legalization and commercialization seem to be much louder and more frequent than those who are in the prevention field. And part of that because those who are in the prevention field often work on things that are related to government grants. They may work for a county agency, and they're probably limited in terms of what they can say and how much they can advocate. And so a lot of their work becomes really after the fact in terms of what they can do. It's been years since I worked for Hazelton, Betty Ford, and done their work, but I will say that Hazelton, Betty Ford, and their adolescent and young adult treatment facility is only a little ways away, that it's in Plymouth, and I know that they used to do things in terms of community outreach, reaching out to the community and providing some of their assistance in those different areas. So just want to do that. And the other thing is as I've come to more meetings recently and watched the work that you do, I just want to commend the council for the good work you do in terms of how diligent you are, how you work cooperatively, and that extends to the work with the staff. It's just really nice to see that that kind of work can be done in the political realm, because all you have to do is turn on the television or whatever, however you get your news, and find that that's not always the case. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ringhofer, and thanks for paying attention and being here tonight. Is there anyone else? Yes. There we go. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment tonight? If not, we will move on. So item 9 is bids and purchases, and we have none of those tonight. So that brings us to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is items that are typically routine, and rather than acting on each individual item, we will read them into the record and act on them collectively in one motion and one vote. However, if someone would like to pull an item for further consideration, please raise your hand and indicate that you'd like to pull the item. We'll pull it. We will vote on the remaining items, and then we will revisit that item and talk about it individually and then vote on that. So I will start by reading these just two items into the record right now. Item 10A is a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Minnetonka and Law Enforcement Labor Services Incorporated Police Sergeants. And item 10B is a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Minnetonka and the International Union of Operating Engineers, local number 49. Would anyone like to pull one of those, or is there a motion? Councilmember Wilburn.
I move approval of consent agenda items 10A and 10B.
Great. Is there a second? Councilmember Romali.
I second the motion.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Wilburn and a second by Councilmember Romali. Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romali,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 11 is consent agenda items requiring 5 votes. We have none of those tonight. Item 12 is introduction of ordinances, and we have none of those tonight. So that brings us to item 13, public hearings, and we have 2. 13A is the 2024-2025 Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG, for Urban Hennepin County allocation. And Ms. Wishnek, That's your report, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. This item is coming to you annually. We do have this hearing every year around the February timeframe, and it's in preparation for the receipt of funds that are coming through the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is a federal program. If you're not familiar with the program, it really is intended to help with community development activities to build stronger and more resilient communities. If you're looking for the total gamut of what could possibly be funded by these dollars, it would be things like infrastructure, economic development, public facilities, installation, community centers, housing, rehab, public services, etc. And usually it serves a population that is in the 80% area median income range and below. So that is the intended audience for these funds. I think it's also important to distinguish what we're doing today versus what we used to do. And so in 2018 and before, we actually received direct allocation of these dollars for community development block grant funds. And I should note that there's still income coming in off of loans made prior to 2018. And so sometimes you'll see in the Economic Improvement Program some of those monies being redesignated back to the county in this instance for program income, and we'll put it back in the county's funds for new loans to be made. So the loan repayments go back out as new loans for rehab projects. Also, if you remember, or those of you who were here would remember this, there was a direction to have a special program created for the Homes Within Reach residents. So anybody who owned a Homes Within Reach home was allowed to apply for funding, excuse me, up to $7,500. And there are, if you aren't familiar with the numbers, there are 62 homes that would qualify in Minnetonka. And 17 projects actually were completed, and we do have about $12,000 left in that fund if there are people in need that have Homes Within Reach homes. So post 2018, so going to the present, Minnetonka did join the Hennepin County Urban CDBG program. And under the arrangement with the county, it really joins with other people and other city governments to pool their resources. So our funding allocations operate from July 1st to June 30th. So it's a little bit different time frame. So when you see some of these numbers in your budget documents and your EIP documents later this year, it always doesn't, some of the numbers don't make sense because of the change in budget year. For this year, we're proposing the 15% for administration that goes to the county to operate our programs. There are 15% designated for public services. Those are things like ICA and some of the programs that we have locally that apply for funds. 1% is designated for fair housing, and then most of the allocation, this almost 70%, is designated for this home rehab program. In general, the 15% income does cover the program administration, so the staffing. If you aren't familiar with any federal programs, there's a lot of compliance that's required and a lot of uploading of information and different documents that the federal government requires. It is very labor intensive. I remember the years where we had that in-house, and it was quite time consuming, so we're happy to have the county do that for us. Back to the public services, you know, instead of just having our own pool of fund, it's about $450,000 that's now available for public services. There's the rest of the organizations. ICA, Homeline, Senior Community Services, and Sojourner have received past funding. And the applications, if you're talking to anybody, they have exactly 3 days to get their applications in, so February 15th. As far as the home rehab programs, it's up to $20,000. It's a no interest deferred loan. Again, it's for those who are making up to 80% AMI. Historically, since the program was incepted, there have been about 340 homeowners assisted, and that was providing over $2 million of improvements. In the last year, there are 5 projects that were completed, 9 projects were approved, and 7 had completed their applications. And that's just a continuous rolling cycle of projects. And some of you have been on the council for a while, remember where we had lots of lead time for these projects and people were waiting because the terms are so good and so attractive that people wait a long time to get these rehab monies. So how do you find out about it, right? How do you know that Minnetonka has this money or that the Hennepin County folks have that money? It's interesting, we have such a good Google rate. If you just typed in home rehab Minnetonka, that's it, 3 words. This is the first page on the right-hand side of the screen here, and it lists every single project or every single program that Minnetonka offers in terms of home rehabilitation. So you can see the Homes Within Reach grant, the home enhancement, the rehab program, energy loans, foreclosure prevention, deconstruction grants, accessibility ramp assistance, anything that homeowners would need for financing home improvement loans are there. Now, if you're not an online person, right, what do we do for you if you don't like to Google and you don't like to spend your time online? One of the things we do is we do a lot of outreach, but one of the things coming up on February 25th is the home remodeling fair. And so our information is shared with people at that fair looking for improvements to their home. There's lots of vendors, but also city government comes and shares their information as well. So tonight we're recommending that you adopt the resolution, and it would be to allocate the $132,000 for the home rehab program. And then also in that motion, you're authorizing the negotiation and execution of a subrecipient agreement with Hennepin County and any third parties that provide those services. With that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wishnak. Council, questions for staff? Councilmember Coakley.
Thank you, Mayor. I had asked Mike about this earlier today. The $132,000 that's being allocated to the home rehabilitation program. What does that all entail? Does it cover the programs that you listed before that the money typically covered in the past, or is this what will the money be funding or helping with? Because I'm kind of confused about what it was helping with before. It sounds like it's getting kind of moved from that and just going into the housing rehabilitation program versus helping all of the different programs that was listed.
Ms. Wishnak.
Thank you. Mayor and Councilmember Coakley, there's actually, this percentage here is controlled by law. So under community development block grant, you cannot use more than 15% to support local services or public services like ICA or Homeline or senior community services. So in no scenario can you spend more than that. And it doesn't matter if the city has the funds or if the county has the fund. It's the same rule. There's no allowance beyond that. So we've always allocated a lot of the funds under CBDG for these home rehab programs. It's been probably since 2005, I'm thinking, when that original program, the use of the funds for rehab loans came up, and we've been consistently doing that because we see the need and that there's a lot of people waiting for those funds. So that hasn't changed, and the maximum percentage hasn't changed over those years. Is that did I answer the question?
No, it's
Oh.
not answered.
Okay.
I'm trying to find out, is the other programs that was funded in the past, are they like ICA, Food Chef, Homeline, are they also going to be funded, some of that money, or is it just going to the home rehab? So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Mayor
Ms.
and
Wishnak.
Councilmember Coakley, I'll try again. The 15% is still the same amount, so the same amount goes into the consolidated pool. The city doesn't make those decisions. The consolidated pool of cities makes the decision on who's funded. So again, last year, these are the projects or the entities that were funded. I can't promise you that that's who is funded this year because it's a different entity making those decisions. The benefit of joining that, though, is that you have more dollars than you would alone. So alone, the city would have $25,000 to spread across those organizations. By applying for the consolidated, they have a chance at bigger dollars or bigger funding. So that's the benefit. Does that
So
help?
So you're saying that they have to apply for it through, I guess, the county, maybe Hennepin County, and then that's how it's determined through that source?
Yes, Mayor and Councilmember Coakley, it is determined by the Hennepin County Consolidated Pool Committee. Yes, that's true.
And Ms. Wishnak, just to fill in, I mean, it's been that way for the last several years. It's
Since 2018, yes.
right.
Okay.
So we haven't changed versus last year, but prior to 2018, it was done differently.
Okay.
Yeah, if you recall, Mayor,
I do recall.
I bet you do. And the rest of the council, maybe you don't remember this process, but there would be individual organizations that would approach the EDAC. The EDAC then would recommend to the council certain amounts of money for nonprofit work like these organizations. And so it was highly competitive. We couldn't fund everybody. It was probably frustrating for the applicants because they had to go to every single city they served. So for ICA, which is a multi-city organization, they would have to approach every city for their CBG funds instead of going to one source at the county. So I'm sure it was a little difficult for them to process all of that. I would think it's more efficient for them the way it's set up now.
And I'll just add, it's certainly more efficient for us because we would listen to those pitches from each of those organizations. And you know, I think for an organization like ICA, that we all know, it's an important organization that is not just in Minnetonka, it's in Hopkins, it's regional. My guess is that they're getting more money than they would have going to cities individual because they have such a significant impact in our West Metro region. So I think it's a better deal for them too. Less work, more money. That's kind of a winning combination.
All right, I understand. I just didn't want to, not.
That's a
I
good
didn't
question.
want to make sure that we was still funding these organizations if we could. I didn't want to be changing something. So that's why I was asking because I wasn't clear about how it was being used because I thought it was just going to this one pool versus spreading it out. So that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Coakley. I think it was a good question, so I appreciate that. Council, other questions for staff? Otherwise, let's see, this is a public hearing item. So I'll open the public hearing and ask if there is anyone in the audience that would like to comment on the 2024-2025 Community Development Block Grant Funds Program through Hennepin County. Are there any comments? I kind of have to ask multiple times, so any comments? All right, then I will close the public hearing and I will bring it back to the council for comments or a motion or both. Anyone? Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution regarding the 2024-2025 Community Development Block Grant funds, authorizing Hennepin County to carry out the proposed activities.
Very good. Is there a second? Councilmember Coakley.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Coakley. We've got the alliteration going on there. Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romaley,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries. Item 13B is a second public hearing item, and that is an on-sale intoxicating and Sunday on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses for Heather's Minnetonka LLC at 5445 Eden Prairie Road. And Ms. Wishnak?
Thank you, Mayor.
Still your turn.
It is. Thank you, Mayor and Council members. This is the second time you'll be hearing this liquor license. Again, this is the replacement of the Kazuku restaurant in Glen Lake, and so it's a new restaurant to that existing location. Just to familiarize yourself, it's kind of an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. type of business. They will be serving liquor. They indicate that they will have online training for their waiters and waitresses as they enter serving liquor at their establishment. They have a 84% food to 16% alcohol ratio that they indicated on their application. As a reminder, we do check that. We audit several businesses every year to ensure that they're complying with the city's regulation on food to liquor ratio. We have notified residents in the area. There's a sign at the business indicating that you are considering a liquor license. The police did conduct their investigative information. That investigation is shared in your private packet for this evening's meeting. So, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you to continue that public hearing from January 8th, and we are recommending granting the licenses. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Wishnak. So this public hearing was opened on January 8th, but I'll ask council if you have questions first for Ms. Wishnak or staff. It's a new restaurant in Minnetonka, established location. Any questions? All right, then I will, the public hearing is open. Would anyone from the audience, or is the applicant here by any chance? Would they, if you'd like to come forward and just tell us a little bit about your, this, you can make a little pitch too about your restaurant, but please introduce yourself and tell us what's going on.
Thank you. My name is Heather Asbury. I have a restaurant in South Minneapolis currently called Heather's. Looking forward to being in the Glen Lake neighborhood. I love family friendly. It's approachable food. We cater, so looking forward to working with everybody. Some future
Excellent.
events.
And now, are you open, or when do you open?
No, they are currently still in business.
Okay.
So we are finalizing the sale of the building here shortly in the next few weeks, and then hoping to open in May.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, thank you. Welcome,
Thank you.
welcome to Minnetonka.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, public hearing's open. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this? If not, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for comments or a motion, or both. Councilmember Calvert?
I'm good for it, Mayor.
I know you are.
So I'll just keep it brief. I'm just, I used to work at a Japanese restaurant, so I'm always sad when a Japanese restaurant closes. However, I'm very glad that we have another business coming into that location. I remember when that corner wasn't quite as vital as it is today, and so I'm glad they're coming, and I am happy to make the motion to approve the on-sale intoxicating and Sunday on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Heather's Minnetonka.
And is there a second? Councilmember Romali.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert, a second by Councilmember Romali. Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romali,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsum.
Yes, motion carries. That brings us to item 14, which is other business, and we have two items. The first, 14A, is items concerning Minnetonka Flats at 5290 and 5300 Spring Lane, 5295 and 5325 County Road 101, and 5301 Tracy Lynn Terrace. And Mr. Gordon, I believe that's your report.
I do.
So take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is the item as you noted. I'll just pull up the location map here. Got two slides, two images on this slide. This is the location on the left side, right at the corner of 101 and Excelsior Boulevard, just south of Highway 7. And then on the right side is just a little more zoomed in to the parcels. There are 5 of them kind of owned by the Lake West owner. 4 of those would be part of this project. It's about 4 acres in size. You can see some of the surrounding streets here. 101 along the west side, Excelsior Boulevard on the north. Then there are the connecting neighborhood streets, Spring Lane off of Excelsior Boulevard, and then on the south side, Tracy Lynn Terrace connecting there as well. A little background about the property with the land use designations here, shown in the red outline on the left. So for zoning, this is a R1 zoned group of properties, as are many of those around the site in the neighborhood. Our comprehensive plan also guides it for low density as well. So real briefly here, the screen just shows the two proposed 20-unit condominium buildings. Those would be built on 3 of those lots. The fourth lot, kind of the southern end of this, Tracy Lynn Terrace, would just continue to be buffer. But again, those are the removal of those three homes. They were built in the 50s, and then this is the proposal here for the 2 20-unit buildings. So these are connected buildings in that they have an underground parking area beneath them. The access comes from Spring Lane off of Excelsior Boulevard, kind of a swooping circuitous drive in there to get under the building or into the on-site parking, surface parking on the east side of the northerly building. These are buildings that would be presumably constructed together just because of the shared amenities and the shared garages. A lot of the amenities that would happen are shared between both buildings. There are variances that are requested with the project. The code requires for a building of this type to have access onto a arterial or collector roadway, not a neighborhood street. Kind of unfortunate the county in this situation isn't allowing access onto either roads. It's suggesting that the access come from the neighboring streets. So the connection proposed, as I mentioned, is off of Spring Lane. The front yard setback requirement is 50 feet, and that would be reduced to 35. And then the other variance requested is for the removal of 64% of the high priority trees. That's essentially 29% above the maximum removal rate for high priority trees. So the proposal then changes to kind of attain that density, the zoning and the comprehensive plan from single family R1 to R4, and then the low density residential to the medium density residential category. So these are again the summary of those applications: the comprehensive guide plan from low to medium density, rezoning from R1 to R4, site and building plan review with those variances I noted, and then the preliminary plat to combine those properties into a new parcel. Again, as noted in the staff report, this is a project that if you were to deny would require just a majority vote, 4 of 7. If you were to approve the project, it would require 5 of 7 with those variances requiring the 5 votes, so a total of 5 for the whole project. Our staff recommendation, although this project has a lot of history to it, it was previously approved for a single family neighborhood at a preliminary plat for that. It did not make it to final plat, where there were smaller lot single family homes approved in the preliminary plat. The developer since changed to this type of a program for the property. We went through a concept plan, as we kind of noted in the staff report, for looking at the corner property for a 20-unit building, and then having some residential be built between the building and Tracy Lynn Terrace. This came back different than that. It didn't come back with a single family component. It came back with another building. So we had 2 buildings here and no single family. So that's essentially the change going forward from the concept plan process. And I think, during the concept plan process, both staff Planning Commission, Council, the three entities, both thought that that was probably a reasonable approach to developing the property. In this case, with the two buildings, we didn't think that that was maybe the best approach for this area, and we were recommending that we deny the project, again, based on that lack of transition into those single-family neighborhoods. So this doesn't represent something that we felt was reasonable to guide, rezone, replat, and then build the buildings with this density and tree impact on the site. So that was our staff recommendation going forward to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission reviewed this on the 1st of February. They also held staff's recommendation in keeping with the same findings. They thought that it was too dense. Although the corner seemed reasonable for more density, the rest of the site and that increase in density was not reasonable. So that was their recommendation going forward, supporting, again, the staff report recommendation. And that was unanimous 7-0. So tonight, this is your final review of this application. We're recommending denial, as I noted, and we're recommending you adopt the resolution that's in the packet that reinforces that denial with the findings stated in the resolution and outlined here on the screen. Just of note, if you're seeing that you do not wish to approve this project, again, that's just a simple 4 vote majority. If you do want to go forward with the project, if you like the project, that will require 5 votes because of those variances. I'm also going to pause for a moment. If you do want to go forward with the project, we are at the end of our clock. That means tonight we need to have action up or down on this project, with one exception. That would be if you do want to approve the project and have it go forward, we're going to need to have the developer and the city sign a waiver of our 1599 statute, the review time, to allow that to happen. So again, if you are in agreement with staff and the Planning Commission to deny, then we won't need that. If you do want to go forward with an approval of some type, have the project come back, direct staff to prepare a resolution to support the project, then we do need that extension. And we would have that put on the record tonight during the meeting before you make a final decision on that. So sorry to dwell on that for a little bit, but there's some logistics we always have to make sure we're taking care of with these items when they come up to the end of the clock. So with that, Mayor, Council, I'm ready for any questions, but I'll turn it back to you at this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gordon. And Council, any questions for Mr. Gordon on this proposal? And I have one that might be relevant to all of us, and perhaps it's for Ms. Heine, because we have 6 council members here, not 7 tonight. Does that, what's with 6 council members, what is a majority and a supermajority? I thought it would be good to clarify that before we proceed.
I don't believe it changes it, but I do need to check the, I need to take a look, and I will get back to you.
Please do that. So then, Council, we don't have to wait. Questions for staff. Councilmember Wilburn.
So I found it, Mr. Funk. So it, in the report, it says, so by city code, principal access to the R4 site must be to a collector or arterial roadway as designated by the comprehensive plan. And that the property has frontage on both County Road 101 and Excelsior Boulevard. Hennepin County will not allow access to either of these 2 roadways. So I'm wondering, so what's the process when a proposal like this comes before us? Then we contact the county, and the county says, did the county give any reasons why not? How does that work?
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn. It's a really good question for this particular site. We have had a county road improvement project along 101 that happened about a decade ago. this is close to the corner. There are future improvements that the county and the city will do with the Excelsior Boulevard and Trail in the future. Those will come. Those will come in the future. The intersection at Spring Lane and Excelsior Boulevard it's a little tricky, where they've proposed to pull the access off from, in that there are not great distances from Spring Lane to the intersection, and then there's a very kind of short left turn lane kind of going westbound on Excelsior Boulevard, so that makes the access in and out a little more challenging than probably the city and the county would prefer to have, but it's just a difficult existing condition. So although that works for an access point, it's not exactly ideal. So as you probably saw in the traffic report, we explored some ideas to look at different locations for access, Spring Lane being one, and then back on Tracy Lynn Terrace being another one that functioned well. So those are again kind of opportunities for access. But yeah, it's not common that we get a comment from the county that they essentially wouldn't allow a permit onto their road system and would push that back onto a city residential street. So for those reasons, we're not, from a staff level, we're not uncomfortable granting that variance. I didn't really pull that out in the variances because it's not exactly germane to the path we're on for denial of the project, but it's a consideration for the project going forward with other development scenarios that may present themselves. So I think that that's certainly something we would consider in the future with another proposal.
One more question.
Yeah, Councilor Wilburn, continue.
So the staff report stated that you don't feel the transition, and the wording is probably not correct, but the transition between the higher density to the lower density neighborhood is not correct. So what would an appropriate transition look like? It doesn't have to be specific, but what's missing that's not in this project?
Mr. Gordon.
Yeah. Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn, I think what we were presented with in the concept plan is probably something that makes sense in this neighborhood, where you have a coordinated effort between a medium density type product and lower density single unit homes that are planned together, organized together, share some access, common facilities, and probably more importantly, expectations, with the neighborhood, where you're moving right to it, and that was part of the development project, rather than having that come right up to the edge of an existing single-family neighborhood that's decades old. So I think that's the distinction that we see here. That's the difference in what we are reviewing and what we saw in the concept plan.
Other questions? Councilor O'Malley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions for staff. I understand there was an addendum that came here regarding the tree ordinance and the counting of the trees, including the high priority trees, and I'd like to perhaps get a few words on that, and also the definition of what a high priority tree is. Thank you.
Mayor and Councilmember Romali, thank you for noting the change memo. That's on the iLegislate. It's not printed out with the individual sheets. So so I'll just give a quick synopsis of that. So when we were at Planning Commission, we had difficulties getting all of the tree information packaged up correctly from the development team so that we could review it. We were kind of running on what we thought the numbers were, and essentially that was confirmed by the developer when we did get the information and did review it, that we were at 64% removal of those high priority trees. So that number doesn't change at all. We just needed to spend time to review that and confirm it for sure. So that is what is in the change memorandum for the meeting tonight. So you got 64% removal, and then they're actually under on the significant trees at 33% when you can remove 50%. So that was kind of a positive. The definition of a high priority tree for deciduous trees are those that are 10 inches and larger, and then they are also those trees that are not an invasive tree or they have some sort of an infestation with like emerald ash borer. So yeah, 10 inches and larger would be the definition.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up then. So they could be ash trees, they could be other types of trees. They're not necessarily native trees. It's just that they're 10 inches or more in diameter. They could be buckthorn.
Yeah, so.
No, or not?
No.
Because they can't be invasive, correct? Got it.
We're going to remove those. Ash would be something that we would actually exclude from the inventory.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Thank you.
so they would not count.
Thank you. And just several
Yes.
more follow-ups, if I could, please. Could you define an R4 limit, kind of what the difference would be, what that would mean in stepping up that zoning?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Romali. This slide shows just a different kind of density ranges for comprehensive land designations. Low, medium, high density as kind of those three designations. Low is up to 4 units an acre, medium 4 to 12, high density is more than 12. So anything that's low density can be R1, R2, or R3. Most of the community is zoned R1 for low density. Very much a lesser percentage of land is R2 and R3. And then we get into medium density, that's typically R3, R4. Probably the asterisk here is we do have like planned unit development zoning, and then that could fit into any of those categories. So if there was a PUD, planned unit development, that would fall into any of these depending on the type of density.
We have just one more zoning district. R1A is another zoning
R1A.
district
Yeah, I
that
forgot
is
R1A.
in the low density residential area.
Yes, Councilmember Romali.
Several more quick questions. My understanding is, and just maybe you can confirm my understanding on a few things. So this project, if the parcels were replatted as one, my understanding from the developer's presentation during Planning Commission is that 69% of the platted area in the new parcel would be green space. Is that correct?
Mayor and Councilmember Romali, I do remember that being stated by the development team.
Okay.
We've not gone back to confirm that number. That may be the area that is included in the building footprint, and maybe the parking area.
Okay.
Just a quick eyeball of the site, it seems like that may be the only thing that could possibly be included in that number.
And if you can also confirm my understanding from the Planning Commission meeting and the plans is that the height of the proposed building structures would be 35 feet, which conforms to R1 zoning requirements. Is that correct for height?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Romali, I remember that as well. And again, if we got to the building permit stage, we'd have to confirm those numbers for sure with a building permit. But that would be typical of an R1 zoning is 35-foot height limit.
Okay. And my understanding as well is that this development kind of conformed with affordable housing requirements in that my understanding was that the price point would be approximately in line with some of the newer homes, newly constructed homes or newly bought homes in that neighborhood, and that with a 10% affordable housing requirement by the city for this development, that would have meant 4 units at less than half of that price, which would have brought it between $300,000 and $400,000. Just confirming that.
Ms. Wishnak?
Thank you. Councilmember Romele, I think the point is they are required to have affordable housing, and it can't sell for more than $310. That's the maximum price point.
Great.
Frankly, the developer hasn't submitted, in detail that information. I would say we need more information from the developer on how that's going to happen, and the covenants that go with that have to be agreed to.
Correct. I understand that. I just noting the difference between when you have a multi-family unit dwelling like this versus a single family. The affordable housing requirements then kind of kick into play.
Correct.
Okay.
You are correct.
All right. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Mailey, any other questions on this for staff? Anyone? All right. Yep. Okay, Councilmember Coakley, that's why I asked.
I was trying to decide if I want to ask the question or not, but you said there was a time limit on, we had to decide tonight. Can you explain that time limit again, please?
Yeah.
It was a statute that you gave, I think it was like 15.99. I might be wrong on the statute, but can you explain that?
Mayor and Councilmember Coakley, the statute I referenced is exactly that. It's 15.99, and it applies to applications the city receives for development, and the limit is 60 days by statute. We can have one extension of another 60 days by our own unilateral authority to go to 120 days. So the 14th of February is the end of the 120 days. As the slide notes, a waiver is a possibility to extend past the 120, but again, it has to be agreed to by both the city and the developer to do that. So yeah, the point is we need action tonight, or we need a waiver tonight.
Thank you.
Very good. And then, Ms. Heine, you have an answer to the question I posed earlier, I believe.
Yes, I do, Mayor, and I'd also like to just add on to what Mr. Gordon said. Under what we call the 60-day law, if the council does not make a decision tonight, it is automatically approved, even if the council does nothing. So you have to deny or approve, and what staff has suggested is if you wanted to approve, you would want a resolution that set out all of the different conditions. Staff can't draft that tonight. They would need to hear from you, your feedback before they could draft it. And because this is the end of the 120 days, what we would recommend, staff is recommending denial, but if you're inclined to approve, request an extension from the developer, or waiver from the developer. So that's just depending on Mr. Gordon's comments. The answer to your other question was, we only have 6 members here tonight. Does that affect the vote requirement for 5? No. The ordinance requires 2/3 of all members. Doesn't matter whether they're present or not. If you had a vacancy, that would affect the number, because then you would be considered a council of 6, but you're a council of 7 and it requires 5 votes.
Thank you for that clarification. So, council, before we go to the applicant, I just want to ask any unanswered questions. Otherwise, we'll invite the applicant to come forward and share your view of this proposal. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Kelsey Thompson, Lake West Development, 14525 Highway 7 in Minnetonka. Good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you for the presentation to staff. First, I really do want to thank staff. We acknowledge the complexity in reviewing the items related to this proposal. And since the Planning Commission meeting, I've really spent some more time studying the staff report and appreciate how staff boiled down the complexity and offered a black and white analysis of this project. I think staff did a really good job of providing clarity on what we may generally agree upon, which is what I want to focus on tonight. Also, thanks to the neighbors, some of which might be here tonight in person or online. We appreciate this group of caring and respectful neighbors, and we hope you know we hear you and are doing our best to address your concerns. Lastly, thanks to our development team. With me tonight is Nick Meyer from Westwood, our engineering firm, and Kurt Fretham from Lake West Development. We'll do our best in answering any questions you may have tonight, and we thank you for reviewing this project. We spent a lot of time on this and look forward to your deliberation. All right, so as aforementioned in tonight's presentation, I wanted to focus on the positives. When I reread the staff report in preparing for tonight's presentation, it stuck out to me that there's a lot we generally agree upon, which I want to acknowledge. For this site, we generally agree that we appreciate the unique architectural design. So if I could rephrase this statement, I think we agree that we like the way this looks. We generally agree that we appreciate the single-level living housing product. We generally agree that the neighbors expressed concerns about minimizing the impact on traffic and wildlife. We generally agree that a comprehensive guide plan amendment is appropriate at some level. Additionally, we generally agree that a rezoning is appropriate at some level as well. We generally agree that a low-density single-family isn't appropriate for the area on the corner of 101 and Excelsior Boulevard. And we generally agree that medium-density residential is located adjacent to low-density residential in the surrounding area and is appropriate and consistent with basic planning principles. So for clarity, the two examples in the immediate area that this section of the staff report are referring to that we provided in the narrative are Hunter's Ridge, which is just on the other side of the high school, and Carlisle Place, which is northeast on 101 and 7. These are just examples highlighting that historically medium to low density residential is an appropriate transition in uses and are compatible, which is what we're proposing at this site. We also generally agree that an increased density seems appropriate in the Excelsior Boulevard and County Road 101 corridor, and agree that the traffic study report concludes that the roads support 40 units of this use at this site. And lastly, we agree that the city has a need and a goal for more affordable housing, and this project offers 4 affordable housing units instead of 2 units like our concept plan would provide. We do want to acknowledge that there was a discrepancy in the tree calculations, which I understand staff is planning to further review if there's an inkling for approval tonight from council. We feel confident that we can work this out with staff to resolve this issue. And so while we agree upon all of this, we can also understand from a planning perspective why staff would recommend denial of this project and why Planning Commission would agree with staff's recommendation. Looking at this black and white, some of the hesitation is really around how much density and how much of this parcel should be rezoned. So we considered this and more and found it's really not so black and white. We considered being mindful to the neighbors' feedback to limit disturbances and traffic and preservation of the green space that they're currently used to. We considered a low intensity use. We considered minimizing the environmental impact and abundant spatial separation. We considered the intuitive transition in land use intensity. We considered meeting the housing and land use goals outlined in the comprehensive plan. And we considered designing a product that looks good and fits in the area. We also considered the limitations of the impact from the County Road 101 reconstruction takings. So with all of this taken into consideration, it really boils down to that we have a location here at the corner of 101 and County Road 3 or Excelsior Boulevard that supports 40 units of medium density residential. The roads were designed to support this traffic, and which is difficult to find other sites in the city that allows that. The access doesn't go through or impact an existing residential neighborhood, which is a rare opportunity to seriously consider. And we have a developer here tonight that's willing to do this product type that allows us to use green technologies and minimizes energy consumption, meeting sustainability goals. 40 units of flats is a needed product type in the community. It offers life cycle housing that aligns with the goals outlined in the comprehensive guide plan. This provides 4 units of affordable housing and offers high quality materials that give it a timeless character and appealing look. And missing from our renderings is all the trees, which we're just eliminating so that you can really see through and see the product itself. Additionally, this is a plan that's 85% open space. Of that, about 69% is green. So really talk about preserving green space. This plan does that and more. Over half of the site will really go untouched. Not only will we preserve all this green space, but our plans enhance the ecology by planting more native trees and helping to restore some of the dying woodlands in this area. On top of all that, this is a low impact, low intensity use that creates a transition going from the high intensity corner to the low density residential. And not only does it provide that downward transition, but it's designed to bring energy up and out through the spring lane access to limit impact on the existing neighborhood to the south. So to bring up an analogy, if you had tickets to the Super Bowl, and even if you got them for free, and spent all the time getting to the Super Bowl, combating traffic, finding your seats, paying maybe $30 for a hot dog, right? You wouldn't leave after the halftime show, nor would you leave at overtime. And I bring this up because we just really don't want to miss an opportunity here or cut the opportunity short. Where else will this opportunity arise when the growing population demand in Minnetonka is expected to reach 61,500 by 2040, with an increase of over 7,500 new residents, comprised of about 4,700 new households over the next 16 years. So it's almost 300 households a year. We understand that you might have some questions tonight, in particular about why we moved from the 20 units and single family concept to the 40 units of flats, which we're happy to answer those for you. But if there's any inkling for an approval here tonight, we're open to some conditions and are confident that we can work with staff to address whatever items to resolve. We are willing to sign a extension for the 1599 rule, which I think we may have already signed and submitted to staff. With that, I conclude my presentation and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Council, questions on the Lake West presentation? Anyone? Don't speak at once. Councilmember Romali.
Yes, thank you for that presentation, and it was kind of a summary or a short and condensed version of what you presented to the Planning Commission. So appreciate that. I remember some of the residents, some of their concerns, you know, the fact that this particular site has had a number of plans that have come and gone. And unlike a variance, a rezoning and a comprehensive plan amendment, it doesn't stay with the project, it stays with the property. And so I think, you know, for me, that's a concern. And, you know, what's to say that this plan won't change again? You know, we don't have a lot of specifics on any of the green technology that is supposedly being used and things like that. So, you know, asking for an amendment to a comprehensive plan and for a rezoning to a project for a parcel in which the plans have changed multiple times, that we don't have guarantees that this particular plan will stick, you know, in its details. If that should happen again, my understanding is that from the Planning Commission that, again, this would just convey with the owner, for example, if it was sold. So can you, you know, speak to some of those concerns that I and as well as the residents have expressed?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Ramali. So to address some of those concerns that have been brought up by the neighbors and here tonight, the zoning, as we understand, in the comp plan amendment would stick with the land, but to bring forth any project, we would need to go through building permits and come up with that process. So not just anything could be built on the land without, following that procedure. This plan in particular, what we're really, wanting to do with the property is offer the condo flats, which is a single level living product, that would bring more density to this area, but in result would really open up the green space that we wouldn't be able to do with the single family housing. So I'll bring you to our concept plan that staff mentioned on the left-hand side. You may be familiar with this plan. So in this plan, we had the single family homes on the bottom. There are actually 4 single-family homes there, including 5311 Tracy Lynn Lane, and the 20-unit building on the northern part of the parcel. With this plan, this actually is less green of a plan than with the 40-unit condo flats. When we really studied I think somebody had mentioned that the details were the devil were in the details, and so when we started studying those details and the environmental impact, the 40 units of condo flats really offered this green buffer space that's just south of the buildings. So the Tracy Lynn Terrace neighbors would really have an unchanged entrance into their neighborhood. We also explored, being able to put into amenity spaces. With just a 20-unit condo flat, it just doesn't really support the amenities that we'd be able to provide with the 40 units. Also, with the green technologies, I recently read an article by the Environmental Pollution Agency or Environmental Protection Agency that really talked about the use of attached products versus single-family homes and how we're able to be much more sustainable in the way we build the homes, and also how it cuts down on energy consumption just by using shared walls and obviously less square footage per unit. So we really feel like this is a better plan to move forward with. But if there was something that, tonight we wanted to look at, if council and mayor had some ideas on tweaks tonight that we could work with staff on to come up with a resolution on this, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Coakley.
I just want to know, has there been any traffic study in this area? Because I know that's one of the concerns. I went to the neighborhood, because it's in my neighborhood, and drove around like 10 times, it feels like, I'll tell you. But, traffic is really a big concern in that area. And so I just want to know, have there been any traffic study? Because it is pretty busy in that area. My daughter went to Scenic Hikes and Clear Spring, and so that is a big concern. So do you have any feedback on that question?
Yes, great question, and thanks for bringing that up, Councilmember Coakley. We did do a traffic study. The city hired SRF, a consultant, to do a traffic study, and the report came back with that there will be that the roads will continue to function as they are, so that the roads do support the 40 units of condo flats. And I'll mention that the traffic study that was performed, just calculated as if 40 units of condos were to be, in this place. It didn't take into consideration that these would be condo flats typically catered toward empty nesters, so just maybe a little bit of different travel patterns than your typical single-family household would have. So we think that likely the impact on traffic would be even less than what the traffic study is reporting, but ultimately it did conclude that the roads would operate and function as they are.
If you did the 40 units in this area, do you have an idea how many folks possibly could live in this area? Because would it be like 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms? I mean, what are you thinking?
That's a great question. Most of the units will be 2 bedrooms, 2 bedroom plus den, There are a few one bedrooms, so likely 1 to 2 people per unit. So under 80, depending on if, it's 2 people. I'm not really sure on exact numbers. We could come up with a range.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone? All right, I think that's it for now. That doesn't mean we won't have more questions later, but we'll kind of work through the process.
Thank you.
So is there, we had a public hearing. This has been through the Planning Commission, and the formal public hearing for this project occurs at the Planning Commission. But we always do like to ask if residents would like to make any comments on this project. If we have residents that live in the area and have comments, we'd like to invite you to come forward. We're not looking for long comments, but we are, if there's anyone here who wanted to address the council on this project, please come forward, state your name and address, and let us know what you would like to, what you'd like to share with us. And if there's no one's required to come, because we all did look at the Planning Commission and understand what was said in that public hearing. Is there anyone? All right, I'm not seeing any public comment on this item, so we will bring it back to the council for comments. Councilor Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been actually around long enough to remember some other proposals in this general vicinity that have not come to fruition, and I think some of the things that were said in tonight's presentation have some merit. If I'm, I think as I watched the Planning Commission meetings, and we also took a first look at the housing product, the general design was compelling and attractive, and the applicant is correct that single level living is very hard to find. You often find townhomes with stairs, and so the idea of flats is great. I think there is some merit to some amount of density on the corner there. So I think that, a lot of the presentation had some merit. However, I think that the points made in our packet by staff about the elements that are problematic and kind of repetitive, some of these issues from Lake West are kind of repetitive issues. And I think one of the things that I really appreciated in the Planning Commission meeting about the 2 Lake West projects in front of us tonight is when Chair Sewell mentioned, we don't want onerous, we don't have ordinances to be onerous. We have ordinances because they reflect the values of our community. And in the city survey year after year, trees are the #1 reason that people live in Minnetonka. So, looking at the anticipated tree removal, it's an issue. The stormwater management apparently also would not meet our stormwater rule. The affordable housing part of the proposal is undefined, which makes it less impressive and less compelling to me. We have a wonderful staff that understands development, and not just development, but high quality development that makes our city make sense. And so I think that, they've already said that that density makes sense on the corner, but that it needs to be stepped down to have an appropriate transition between medium density and low density residential. And they're right. So there's just not an appropriate downward density transition. So while I think there's some, things that are really compelling, there are also some problems that have not been sufficiently resolved for me to approve it tonight, and so I will be a no vote tonight.
Other comments, council members? Councilmember Romali?
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with my colleague, Councilmember Calvert. I believe there are some very, compelling things about this project: the sustainability, the affordability, albeit undefined, the aesthetics, the appropriate location, and the fact that it does fill many smart growth goals and plans. However, this does require amending our comprehensive plan and rezoning, which is always problematic. And the only thing that I am concerned, and so I will be voting against or for denying the proposal. However, I just want to, as a caveat, note some concerns about doing so, in that when we are denying these projects, notwithstanding some of the issues that are still there, I worry about incentivizing larger homes on larger parcels, which is not the way we want to go if we want to, more sustainability, more affordability, and so forth in Minnetonka, which is in desperate need of more housing accessibility for middle and working class folks, as well as for our seniors who are trying to downsize. So we can talk about this again in regards to the next project. So again, I will be voting against or for denying this project, but I would encourage this and other developers to continue to work on projects like this. And also, we might want to consider at some point, with the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan coming online, our Energy Action Plan, both of which came online since our 2020 kind of comprehensive plan redo, that at some point, as those, especially the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan comes online, we may want to look at an interim review of our comprehensive plan, as well as our zoning. And with that, I will.
Thank you, Councilmember Romali. Anyone else? Councilmember Wilburn?
So for me, it's when, in order to approve a variance request, the request has to meet the practical difficulty standards, and I don't think it does. So really, that's we can discuss all the other things, and I agree that there's always for me, there's the tension between environment and wanting to be environmentally friendly, but also we need places for people to live, and we need affordable places for people to live, and striking that balance. So, some other things can be discussed, and though we really are not generally in favor of going against the tree ordinance, but those are things that can be discussed. But if you don't meet the practical difficulty standards, then we can't grant the variance, and so we can't approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilburn. Are there any other comments? I mean, it appears that there are not going to be enough votes to approve this proposal. There are probably enough votes to deny, but does anyone have any other comments? I don't want to cut anybody off, but I do want to move things along. I'll just add a couple of things. That the proposal was not very specific on affordable housing, but I think what the proposal does is it meets the minimum of the city's affordable housing policy. If you're going to do multi-family housing, you're going to do affordable housing, but it didn't offer anything extra. And I've been doing this a long time, and typically when you're asking for a lot of change, and you're asking for a comp plan change, you're asking for a zoning change, and you are asking for variances, and you're coming in at the minimum of the affordable housing. That doesn't typically pass the Minnetonka smell test, although I'm not sure there's a Minnetonka smell test, but, but, I think, because at the end of the day, I think this is going to get denied tonight. But I also think that greater density at this corner is not going to go away tonight, but it needs to be different. And that's generally what I'm hearing from my council members as well. So, I think we're in a position to take a motion to deny, and we should do that and move on. But I don't want, if anyone else has any comments that they would like to make on this project, please do. Otherwise, I'd be looking for a motion on this item. Councilmember Calvert?
Thank you, Mayor. I will make the motion to adopt the resolution denying the Minnetonka Flats proposal.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. We've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Foster Bolton. Ms. England, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romalee,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries, and this item is denied. And I've got 8:45. I think we could take a 5-minute break or 7-minute break and let's come back at 10 minutes to 9, and we'll try and move through the last item. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started again. We are at item 14B, which is a preliminary plat of Emerald Estates with floodplain alteration permit and tree removal variance at 2503, 2505, 2511, and 2615 Plymouth Road. And Mr. Gordon, still your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. This is my
I don't like
last
that when
item
they say that in
tonight.
golf, still your turn. I've heard it many times, but still your turn.
Thank you. I love being up. So this is the Emerald Estates, as you noted. And just a refresher here, this was previously called Woodbridge Estates in a previous proposal, shown on the screen here, where the access came off of Plymouth Road. And under this proposal, just some of the things that we had commented when it was at Planning Commission were the significant alterations to the topography, to the floodplain, and at that time, kind of an unknown level of compliance with the tree ordinance. So the new proposal, again, and this was reviewed by the Planning Commission on February 1st, was a change in that previous proposal to the layout and to the name. So Emerald Estates, again, the new name here, and access coming from Emerald Lane to the north. The lots are increased from 13 in that previous to 14. There's been quite a bit of floodplain reduction here, alteration. There's been a lot of floodplain area, compensatory area added, and that's both to the area that is floodplain and then for treatment as well. The roadway, the lot area, dimensions, and setback variances are removed in this proposal, but there is still a tree variance, and I'll get into that in a moment here. So again, this is a street system that comes off of Emerald Lane into a cul-de-sac on the southern part of the site. 12 of those 14 homes are accessed off of that new roadway connection, and then 2 of the homes would be afforded access from Plymouth Road, and then the drive connection there, kind of adjacent to Amy Lane across the street. In terms of the tree variance with the project, there are kind of three factors in this. The woodland preservation area, which includes kind of the middle of the site, that tree removal is 10% over what the code requires. Code requires 25% of a woodland preservation area can be removed. And a woodland preservation area is, again, that native habitat that's 2 acres in size. That's essentially the short definition of what a woodland preservation area is. So 10% in excess of the limit is being removed on the WPA. For high priority trees, again, those are those deciduous trees that are 10 inches or larger. That removal is 50%. That is 15% above the maximum allowance for removal of high priority trees at 35%. And then lastly, significant trees, those are those trees that are 4 inches to just under 10 inches. The limit is 50%, and this removal would remove 71%, so a 21% exceedance of the code. During the Planning Commission meeting, the developer spent some time talking about practical difficulties, and I'm not really going to talk about practical difficulties other than just to remind the council of what the definition or the standards are by which practical difficulties are measured. So it's those things that the property owner proposes to use the property for in a reasonable manner, not permitted by ordinance. The plight of the landowner due to circumstances that are unique to the property, that are not created by the landowner. And the last one here, if a variance were granted, it wouldn't alter the essential character of the locality. So those are the standards by which we always measure variances. And the last thing here, economic considerations are not part of those factors in considering to grant a variance or not. So just keep those in mind. Rolling the clock back quite a ways here, in the 90s, as this section of Plymouth Road was developing, there were a number of parcels that were large and deep and had frontage on Plymouth Road. And those parcels shown on the right-hand side of the screen show those areas and those years that there was anticipated development wanting to happen before the neighborhood developed. In an effort to kind of fully realize the rest of the development south of this neighborhood on Amy Lane and to the area to the south on the Dudica property, the city put together a plan that would essentially identify how a future street connection could occur off of the southern end of the street. So it looked at a future street connection, parcels that were included in there, and then the connection back to, again, that street network. So that was a plan that was adopted as an official plan for this property. It was also recorded against properties to the north that were developing to put those neighbors on notice that a street could come from this neighborhood to connect the rest of the property, to address some of the issues that were being talked about at that time with future road connections and driveways onto Plymouth Road. So that's just some information. Okay, so this is kind of a quick summary of our staff recommendation for this project. Again, we're not in a position tonight where we're recommending approval of this plat, and that's mostly because of the trees. So as I noted, those anticipated removals exceed the code in all those three primary tree areas, the WPA, the high priority trees, and the significant trees. We understand that this property is going to develop at some point in time. The question isn't if, it's, or necessarily when, but how. And this proposal really doesn't check the boxes in providing a development plan that fits our goals and our code standards that we can recommend approval of. And again, that's primarily based on the tree removal. So there's too much development or not enough development in the right spots to preserve the trees. You can look at that both ways. We don't have a plan that we can look at in either of those ways that we would recommend approval of tonight. So that's the takeaway. Planning Commission felt the same about the project. They thought essentially there was too much tree impact because of the development. They supported the staff findings, and they were unanimous in their support at 7-0. So our recommendation back to you with support of the Planning Commission was to deny the proposal for the preliminary plat with the variances. We've put the findings here as were noted before. Kind of lastly, we are also at the end of the time frame to review this, so we do need to have action tonight. And if you wish to follow the staff recommendation and adopt the resolution that denies the preliminary plat and variances, 4 votes are required to do that. If you're on a path where you would like to approve this project in some fashion, that's a 5-vote item. And we would also request that you waive the review time so we could provide findings and a supportive resolution to approve the project, have that happen at another meeting. So similar to last project as well. So with that, Mayor, Council, I'll turn it back to you for any questions of staff. The developer is still here.
Very good.
For your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. First, I'll turn to council and ask if you have questions for staff. Anyone? I'm good for a couple on this one. You're looking at the plat that is before us. And it's always hard to look at these in isolation. We just faced a situation in the item that we just voted on where the county did not allow access to a road from a proposed development. And here we're seeing in this plat 2 driveways onto Plymouth Road, which is a county road, as I understand it. And, so I'm asking, is that, how does the county, and I'm not asking you to speculate on the county's view, but how do they view, driveways coming off onto a county road? And would that be viewed in a different way than a street access off a county road?
Mayor and council, the county has review authority because this property with access drives are directly onto the road. So they have permit authority to issue a permit or deny a permit or require conditions on a permit that they would afford access to parcels. My speculation is that they would want a consolidated drive on the 2 lots shown here from Plymouth Road if these were approved. They might also want to explore access back to the right-of-way on the north side and see if there's some other solutions there as well, as that would connect with Amy Lane across the street. So there's probably a couple of different ways to look at this going forward. Again, the plat process tonight doesn't necessarily dictate how that access is afforded, but it would have to be in some fashion going forward.
Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. And then my second question, not surprising, it has to do with trees. And while I am not intimately familiar with this property, we've certainly looked at it numerous times, and I've been there. And it's my understanding that there's a lot of ash trees on this property, and with emerald ash borer, we're not counting ash trees in our surveys. But the numbers that are before us don't include ash trees in any of that removal. That is taking the ash trees out of the equation, and these are all of the other trees. Is that correct? I just want to be absolutely clear on that.
Yeah, Mayor, that is correct. This is an infestation area that was identified a couple years ago. So all of the ash trees that are on the property are not included in the tree count for the property. They may still exist on the property. I have one correction too. I inadvertently said the connection across the street was Amy Lane. That Amy Lane is to the north. Woodbridge is across the street. Thank you to my colleague Julie for catching my error. Thank you.
Covered a lot of ground tonight. Understandable. So, are there Councilmember Wilburn? I knew I could prod a question out of somebody here.
Just a quick question. What's a woodland protection area?
Mayor and
Mr. Gordon.
Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn. In very simple sense, woodland protection area is a native remnant of upland area in Minnetonka. It's got a tree resource that's native. It's got an understory that's also has a plant community that's compatible with that. And it's also 2 acres in size at a minimum. So that remnant has to be of some significant size to matter. So simple sense, that's the definition.
All right. I'm going to ask if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I will invite the applicant again to come forward and share your presentation with us. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. I'm back. All right, good evening. Kelsey Thompson, Lake West Development, 14525 Highway 7 in Minnetonka. First, thanks to staff again for working with us on this. We appreciate your suggestions and guidance, and thanks to the neighbors for being out here tonight. Thanks to our development team. With me tonight is Luke Halstead from Laux, our engineering firm. Joanne Dudica, the property owner of the two bigger parcels on the screen, 2615 and 2511 Plymouth Road, who unfortunately had to leave early. I believe she broke her leg. So it was big thanks to her for coming out tonight. We also have Adam Niblick from Taft Law, who will be speaking tonight on behalf of the seller and Lake West, and Kurt Fretham from Lake West Development. So thanks again to council members and mayor for reviewing our application this evening. So on the screen, I've highlighted the subject properties. The two parcels on the south we typically refer to as the Dudica properties after Miss Dudica are highlighted in orange, and then in yellow are the two northern parcels that we refer to as the Irving properties for a total of just under 11.5 acres. To give some background and just to jog your memory on how we got here from the concept review phase, you're likely familiar with the image on the right hand of the screen. This is the loop-through site plan when we were just considering the Dudica properties for development, but because of an access issue, we were somewhat forced to buy the northern properties for access, which is how we got to the plan that you're reviewing tonight. So I'm showing that loop-through plan on the screen again in comparison to then the plan that we brought forth that wasn't reviewed by Planning Commission or Council. But this was then the plan that Lauren had showed on the screen. So this is where we really thought we were in alignment. So after we acquired the parcels to the north for access, because just some backstory for some of you that don't know, the county was not allowing access where that southern road comes in, where there's an existing driveway on the south. So that was our preferred access point, kind of trying to loop around the WPA area, and the county was saying no to that access point. In fact, they're really saying no to the northern access point as well. Their preference is to put the access through the middle of the two parcels on the left, which would go right through the heart of the WPA area, taking out too much of the WPA area. So that's then why we moved our access to the north, which we thought we were in alignment with the city and the county by utilizing the Woodbridge Trail right-of-way that's planned access. It aligns with the Woodbridge Trail across the road. And we're being mindful of the neighbors. This seemed to be the appropriate access. However, once we got into the details, the county was requiring a 300-foot-long turn lane. That's the kind of brown on the left along Plymouth Road that would require retaining walls and removal of more trees that wasn't really desirable by really anyone. And then because of the city, there's a right-of-way that's highlighted in yellow on the right hand of the screen next to the number 1. This is really what's driving some of the encumbrances that we're having on this property, really that this the city's past planning when they decided to take the Burl Road right of way and give it to the two adjacent property owners back in '95. So again, as I mentioned before, the county really wants us to access the site in the middle of the two parcels, but again, that goes through the WPA area, removing above the threshold there. So when we met with, well, before I get to that, so the Woodbridge Trail access also ends up going through the floodplain, which is highlighted in brown. So this was another no-no from the city. And so when we met with staff, they guided us to go through the Emerald Trail, extending that cul-de-sac, which brings us to the plan that you are reviewing tonight. So this plan it's a 14-lot plan. It extends a cul-de-sac from Emerald Trail, bypassing the floodplain and serving 12 lots. 2 lots will use the existing access on the upper northwest with a shared driveway. Following staff's suggestion of using the Emerald Trail access, this plan is in conformance with the code on all requirements, except for this plan would require a tree removal variance. So our former plan had variances from right-of-way and lot depth, so we removed all of those variances. This plan did meet the trees. However, this plan would need the approval of a tree removal variance. I just want to note that the tree ordinance does not apply to projects with a density of no more than 1 unit per acre. So if we came in or anyone came in with an alternative plan for this site at that density of 1 unit per acre, the tree ordinance would not apply. There is an exception to the tree removals that the city may allow removal over the threshold if we were providing reasonable use or access to the property. This is the same map. This was printed and taken right from the staff report. But this is the map that the city calls their official map to suggest street alignment on the east side of Plymouth Road, showing these properties split up into so the properties, the four parcels that we're proposing tonight, splitting up into 15 lots. So this is a little reasonability test that we did comparing the average lot size of what we're proposing to the neighboring lots. So averaging out all of these lots, we're coming down to a 0.72 acre average. Some other reasons for just like reasonable use of this land. It is an R1 single family. There's no rezoning. Again, comparable lot sizes within the immediate area. It aligns with staff's road configuration map that was previously presented, and that there are no variances requested except for the trees, which is really due to the city's past planning taking of the right-of-way. This looks like a lot of math, but it's quite simple. We just took a 500-foot radius around this property, averaged out all the lot sizes, and it came down to an average of 0.66 acres. So again, we're coming in at 0.72 acres for our average lot size compared to the neighborhood. So just a reasonable use of the property for those 15 or 14 lots. So with that, I'll conclude this portion of the presentation, and I'll invite Mr. Niblick to the stand.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As Ms. Thompson suggested, or as Ms. Thompson introduced earlier, my name is Adam Niblick. I'm with the law firm of Taft in Minneapolis. And I'm here on behalf of the property owners as well as Lake West Development to submit that the substance of the staff report indeed actually supports a preliminary plat approval as proposed with the included variances. I say this because if you look at the ordinance mechanics, there is indeed alignment between the proposed development and the city's planning and policy goals, specifically surrounding the preservation of the woodland preservation areas, high priority trees and significant trees, as well as other natural resources upon the property. Strict adherence to the city's tree ordinance would cause practical difficulties, specifically because of circumstances to this property which are not created by Lake West Development. As Ms. Thompson gave clear and succinct overview of earlier, not all of the circumstances that are preventing issues for this property are created by Lake West. Specifically, the floodplain, there are steep slopes, the quantity of high priority and significant trees, the existence, size, and location of the woodland preservation area, which is about 2.72 acres and sits adjacent to the county road, as well as the city's 1995 vacation of Burlwood Road right-of-way. Also, the Hennepin County's comments with regard to the points of access to the property, all of which collectively create very significant site access issues, which are causing practical difficulties for the development of this property. I would submit that Lake West Development has gone through a number of iterations in trying to develop this property, responding to the various city concerns with regard to specific variances and other aspects, and this is a very reasonable use. I would also like to submit for your attention that the woodland preservation area provisions within the code just talk about area being excluded, and there is a southern spur of the woodland protection area that is identified, I believe, on one of the previous planning maps, which shows the reduction of the southern spur, bringing the woodland preservation area below or above what is allowed to be excluded. I should note, or what I'm noting for the record, is that notwithstanding the fact that that area is being excluded from the woodland preservation area, the trees, not all the trees in that area are actually being removed. And I think there's also a question from our side as to when that area is excluded, are the excluded trees that are not being removed being added to the population of both the calculations for the high significant trees as well as the high priority trees. So staff did acknowledge in their reports that there are issues with respect to this development, specifically related to limited access, the topographical characteristics of the property, and other resources that are presenting development challenges, but suggest these are not practical difficulties because they do not preclude all development of the property. Those attributes, though, need not preclude all property development to cause practical difficulties. The requested exceptions to the tree ordinance by way of the variances requests are and indeed harmony with the general purpose and intent of the tree ordinances, and they are also consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The plan, if you look at it, encourages the utilization of protection measures, including in the zoning and subdivision ordinances, to 1, preserve woodland preservation areas, 2, preserve high priority and significant trees, and 3, preserve other areas, other natural resource areas on the property. As Ms. Thompson indicated earlier, if the development of this property drops at a density of below 1 unit per acre, the application of the city's tree ordinance becomes inapplicable. That is, the protections that are currently existing in the ordinance to protect the woodland protection area, significant trees as well as high priority trees goes away, which means a developer could come in and they could develop the property notwithstanding those regulations. This site is susceptible to such type of development specifically because of those unique circumstances that I talked about earlier. The topographical issues, the floodplain issues, the access issues, all amount to very difficult conditions for which this property can be developed. And this development, while necessary variances are required, would produce a development that actually produces or preserves more trees than a development that came in that had a larger lot size, larger houses, lower density, but aren't applicable to the city's tree ordinance. I'd also like to highlight that there is a unique provision in the city's tree ordinance, that specifically be in section 314.0170, which in addition to a variance request, allows the city council to allow the removal of protected trees over the prescribed percentage if 1, the removal would promote a public good such as providing reasonable access to a property, or 2, the removal of some trees would promote the preservation of important or unique natural features of trees on the property. Here, as I explained earlier, the approval of these variances would indeed promote the protection of more significant trees characteristics on the property, because while the variances are required, they are required at this density, which would protect the lot in and of itself from being developed at a much lower dense use, where larger lots, larger houses would be developed, but the WPA as well as significant trees and high priority trees would not be protected. Having reviewed all of the planning materials as well as the applications, but I would also be remiss to not mention that with respect to the woodland preservation area mapping and certain aspects of the overall tree ordinance calculations, there are a number of conclusions that are drawn from subjective rather than objective criteria, and those drawn conclusions would be arbitrary and capricious if the council relied upon them today. Specifically, the WPA area map has changed. Those boundaries are kind of a moving target. Specifically also with the issue that I talked about earlier, it's still unclear whether or not that southern spur area, which was removed from the WPA, if those trees that are not being physically removed, but rather being taken from the WPA area, are being added back to the stock of trees for those calculations of both significant trees as well as the woodland, or as well as the high priority trees. And I do have a couple more comments. Specifically, as it was talked about today, I think one of the biggest themes is there are practical difficulties. There have been a number of development opportunities that have been floated. There have been various iterations of plans and plats that have been analyzed. And there was a comment earlier, I believe by planning staff, that this one just doesn't check all the boxes. And after reviewing all the materials and after reviewing this plan specifically and comparing them to the ordinance mechanics as well as the specific characteristics of this property and all the access and topographical issues and tree issues, the projects that would check all those boxes would most likely result in a higher percentage of significant trees, WPA, and high priority trees being removed from that site. So I submit today that the development that is in front of you with regard to this plat, if approved with variances, would indeed actually conform to not only the city's zoning code because of its priorities, but also the city's comprehensive plan, which actually puts a great deal of attention on the protection of these trees as well as the topographical nature of this property. And I'm willing to stand for any questions if there are any.
Council, any questions? Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you take a seat? We'll call you back if need be, but we probably have a few questions for staff. Thank you. So, questions for staff, if you'd like. Councilor Wilburn. I mean,
so many questions, but let's start with, so was the interpretation correct that the tree ordinance does not apply if there's 1 unit per acre or less?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn, the provision in the code for development densities that would essentially avoid compliance with the WPA as a density range where you're at an unit per acre or less. So that on the surface is correct. There's always other issues in reviewing a plat, but that's what the code states about avoiding compliance with WPA.
Okay, can you speak to then the mapping of the WPA and the southern spur that was mentioned?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn, the WPA is shown in the dashed line here on the map, and there was a question that was raised by the applicant about the disconnectedness of the here to a lobe down here. Our natural resources staff has reviewed this property many times, probably more than almost any other property in the community over the past couple of years. So very familiar with the site, very familiar with the ash infestation, emerald ash borer infestation, and then the WPA area. So, based on our review and based on the grading plan that was provided for this property, the staff report we're standing behind the staff report and what is the WPA and what is not the WPA.
very good. Other questions? Councilmember Foster Bolton.
So they mentioned that the city gave away some property to the in 1995. The vacated property, they vacated the property, right? And gave the land to, that's what it says in the here, but it says that that's what, thereby creating an access difficulty for Lake West and justifying the tree removal variance. And then, so I don't know how that fits, like, is that true too? But also, like you guys talked about earlier, the county, I guess I don't understand how that fits. Like, do you know, do you even understand my question?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Mayor and Council Member Foster Bolton, the area that was referenced for vacation is on the adjacent neighborhood, and that connection is right here. So there, when the neighborhood was platted, there was a right-of-way that was platted through to connect to this property. And then after platting and after homes were built, the neighbors on either side of that right-of-way petitioned the city to vacate the right-of-way. And so in a vacation process, the city has to review that. It has to determine if it has interests in the right-of-way for the future. And the city determined that it did not, and so it allowed the vacation request by those two neighbors, those two adjacent owners, to proceed, and then they vacated so the land was vacated and given back to those property owners. That's a request that comes from the neighbors. That's not initiated by the city. So the land was given back to the neighbors. That was kind of posed as a practical difficulty. From staff standpoint, there are other opportunities to provide access to the property. They're not going to come from the west or from the east anymore. Those have been given up. And they're not going to come from the south either, because there's all private property along the south. There are access opportunities along the north and along the west. So again, this property is not landlocked. It does have access opportunities.
Ms. Heine.
Mayor, if I could just add to that, this property and the owners of this property would have been provided notice of that street vacation, and there's nothing in the record to indicate that they objected.
Thank you for that. So, Council, other questions for staff? Councilor Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. In the Planning Commission meeting, one of the commissioners asked about, there's this property, which is quite large, and there's another largish property right across Plymouth Road that is also up for development. And the idea came up regarding an environmental review. So this was 11 days ago now for that meeting. But I just was wondering so how normal is that? Is that something that we could do? Is that something that we do? What would it take to do it? And maybe do it of a piece, because we have properties on both sides that have similar, heavily forested, heavily sloped, drainage, stormwater management issues, a lot of similar issues, and of course wildlife and tree preservation issues.
Mayor and Council, we have had a little bit of experience in the last few weeks on environmental review and kind of explaining the different levels of environmental review. And neither of the projects Councilmember Calvert identified are going to meet any kind of state level review. Okay, they're too small in land area, in the number of lots, in other factors that would hit a minimum threshold for environmental review. As you know, we do environmental review all the time here at the city level with the codes that we have in place and other things that we need to follow that are state or federal guidelines, like wetlands, for example, floodplain. This has features on it that are going to require a lot of environmental review with a project like this or another one going forward, because it has floodplain, it has trees. There are on considerations for slopes as well. So there's a lot of environmental review that we do that doesn't hit those state thresholds, that we answer questions on all the time to get to answers for development or construction. That happens all the time within the city. So yes, the answer is yes.
So my second question has to do with the intent of the 1 unit per acre. And my understanding is that it wasn't to give developers license to mow down the trees just because they could, or they wanted to, or they felt they had some compelling reason to. It had to do with the fact that if it's just 1 house per acre, there would be no need to remove an inordinate number of trees that would violate the ordinance. It just was sort of like, don't need to do it because it just couldn't happen. Am I understanding their original intent?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Calvert, that's accurate. The original tree ordinance in 2008 anticipated, having to accommodate different scenarios for development, and one of those scenarios were just larger lots like exist in some parts of our community that do have quite a few tree resources that would qualify for WPAs, and the respect that some of those owners probably have for those trees with or without a WPA. So it just acknowledged that if you're going to have a lot that was that size, you probably weren't going to build a house that was a half an acre large and remove half of the trees on the property. And so that was another just alternative within the ordinance.
It just made me think of one more
question?
One more question.
Okay, one?
Just one.
Go ahead, Councilmember
Thank
Calvert.
You. I spoke with Mr. Funk this morning. I had a chance to speak with Ms. Wisnak earlier today. And, I've walked this property several times. We've had other, developments come through. And as I understand it, and just having walked the property, the general contours of what's on the screen right now seem to, make some sense, because the most developable property is towards the back of the east of the property. And there was some discussion at the Planning Commission about, this can be tweaked a little bit. I think there are 85 trees that are needed to be protected to get to our ordinance, and there are a couple of extra homes. Is by removing a unit or two, would we be able to get to tree ordinance here?
Mayor and Councilmember Calvert, that's a really good question about if there were less lots platted, less development impact, what is the resulting tree savings? That's the question. I think everyone during the Planning Commission meeting, every planning commissioner kind of recognized that there's something about this proposal that was really similar to a concept plan from a few years ago that was very close to getting to the tree ordinance requirements. And at that time, that developer did not proceed with it. This one has a similar approach where they're developing the east and the south sides of the site that avoid kind of more of the slopes. Still hasn't gotten to the tree issue yet. So I think the Planning Commission was certainly on to, just taking this and trying to do something more to preserve more trees and get to a more developable plan.
Thank you.
All right, I've got both Councilmember Wilburn and Councilmember Rameli. Councilmember Wilburn, I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll do Councilmember Rameli.
So regarding the access and what the county will allow or recommend, so is it accurate that the county wanted the road through the middle going through the WPA? And if so, or were there other alternatives offered? And if not, is it your opinion that more trees would be removed going that way than what's being currently proposed?
Mayor and Councilmember Wilburn, there's kind of a collision of interests here where the county would like the road generally centered in about the middle of the site, and that's about where the intersection of the slopes and the trees occur. So they're not in a position where they're knowing what our ordinances are or have a lot of visibility to that. So they're just looking at where are the best sight lines, going north and south on Plymouth Road for people turning in and out of a potential road. That's the best spot for it from just that limited view of how to program the site. From the city side of it, yes, that may be the more difficult point to to locate a road, because you're going to have to contend with the WPA. You have to contend with slopes. Now again, if you were developing at a lot per acre or less, that maybe that works, but there's still other things that are in play, and that's not under consideration tonight. So I think, again, keeping the focus on what's in front of us is the most important thing going forward. There's a lot of hypotheticals with a lot of other approaches that have been tried as well, and I think that we should just focus on where we're at tonight.
Councilmember Rameli?
Thank you, Mayor. I think my questions have already been asked and
All right.
answered.
Very good. Anyone else? I've got a couple. I mean, we've all known that this is a challenging site, and there have been a few things that have been thrown out. This notion of one home per acre. How many homes, given the size of this parcel, the newly combined parcel with the two owners, how many, if we said, okay, we're going to allow one, I mean, we're going to go with the one home per acre idea, concept, whatever, how many homes would that be? How large is this parcel? And when we say one per acre, does that include property taken out for roads and things like that, or is it just a gross, if it's a 10-acre site, one per acre is 10 lots, or do we look at it differently? So just give me a sense for this parcel.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, that's a good question for looking at this WPA interface, and we're going to look at I'm going to guess it's 8 or 9 lots probably.
All right.
It's going to depend on how the lots lay out. We're going to take ultimately the road out of there with the plat, because that'll presumably become public road. It could be private road. It could factor in, actually. So there's a little bit of a question about that. We don't prefer public or private roads here, so we probably are going to want a public road and would want to require that. But that's my guess, is probably 8 or 9 lots.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Then, I know staff knows a lot about designing developments, but that's not your job. But you probably throw out a few ideas along the way. And there are different tools in the toolbox in terms of trying to get to something that would meet or be very close to meeting the requirements that are in our tree preservation ordinance. And some of those tools may be, certainly you could have fewer lots. I think that would be one tool, and probably a logical tool. But then there's also the whole thing where we have, rather than develop at R1, we've used PUD to reduce setbacks and so forth. And PUDs can be allowed, I believe, according to the law, that if there is a public purpose, you can use a PUD to, I don't know if requires the right word, or recommend a PUD or allow a PUD. But a PUD could be a tool that would change setbacks in different places, that would preserve trees, and change the proposal. So my question is this: do you think that there are, utilizing some of these other tools would enable a reasonable development of this property in such a way that would comply with our tree ordinance?
Mayor and Council, I certainly see that what I know about this property and the couple of years that we've looked at different proposals, there is a path to reasonable development for this property. The question is the number of lots ultimately that would result and result by meeting all of the ordinances that are in place. So that's the question that we don't have a good answer to. Could you get there through the avenue of a planned unit development to reduce some setbacks, have some different types of standards for the project? Maybe. I think what we've seen other developments struggle with on this is what is the public purpose for a site that sits along a county road, has a public trail already along that public road. What is the public benefit that would be something the city would approve? That's a more difficult question for a single family residential project than it is for a multifamily project or a mixed use project.
Okay.
So that's the proposition to any developer.
That's helpful. The other just kind of observation, I mean, trees have value. The city believes they have value. Property owners believe they have value. I think the representative, the person speaking, the attorney, wanted to float the idea out there that, gee, if we do one lot per acre, you could end up with no trees. Well, that's only if you're not very smart, in my view. I think the premise that the tree preservation ordinance is based on is that if you have acre lots, you have a lot of room for trees. And I lived in a place one time where I had an acre lot, and guess what? I had a lot of room for trees. I planted a lot, and there were a lot there. And so this notion that we have to be daunted by that concept because we're going to lose all the trees, well, that's only if you don't really care what the property is worth. So I'm not daunted by that. That's not a threat to me. So I think, as I look at this, I think that, well, anyway, that's more, I'm getting more into comment. But the question is, I think there is a path forward that may be different than the path that's in front of us tonight. So we do have residents here who would like to speak. If there's no more questions from the council, I will invite people forward. There's been a lot of conversation. I want to keep it brief. We haven't done a very good job of that yet tonight, but if you could kind of share your thoughts and concerns and questions that you'd like to have answered, we'll do the best we can.
Absolutely. Ashwin Patel, 2431 Emerald Trail, Minnetonka. I'm here today. I think I represent the entire neighborhood.
Excellent.
We have a petition that's got 28 signatures on it, and a couple of the neighbors have gone for the winter, so we couldn't get a hold of them. And I think after me, one of my other neighbors wants to say a few words too, so I'll be brief as I can.
Thank you.
Firstly, we don't oppose development of that lot. We do acknowledge that lot is going to be, those lots are going to be developed, right? It's just a question of what fits in with the tree ordinance and what fits in with what's in the community today, I think. We're grateful that the tree ordinance is saving us today, I'll be honest with you, right? But some of the other issues that we think you guys should consider maybe not now, but in the future as this lot gets developed, is one, there's another development going in across the road from Amy Lane, right? So just that traffic on Amy Lane and Plymouth Road is going to double or triple right there just from the residents. Amy Lane only contains 2 homes today, but that lane is home to Hopkins school buses, Minnetonka school buses, Blake, Breck, Metro Mobility, Amazon, UPS. So many vehicles come through that lane on a daily basis, as well as all the residential traffic. The cul-de-sac that we're talking about opening up, that's where all the kids play. Not just the kids in our neighborhood, but the kids from those other 3 lots come and play basketball there too. So it's a great gathering place, and it would just be a shame to lose it. Just going to say a couple of more things here real quick. There's also some existing water issues that are detailed in our petition where, you know, we're wondering if those water issues are going to get worse over time as new development comes in, and nobody's really addressed that. Jane's going to talk about the traffic study, so I won't say anything about that. You know, staff mentioned earlier, you know, 30, 40 years ago, the intent was to open up Emerald Trail, right? But time has passed, people have progressed, and we've created a really thriving community that we believe, you know, deserves to be preserved. It's fabulous. Everybody knows everybody. If somebody leaves their garage door open, you get a text or an email or, you know, go close it for me. It's a really nice community. I know they had a really nice lawyer here today coming to talk about, you know, their perspective. We thought about getting a lawyer too, but then we thought, let's see if the process will work for us first, right? So we went to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission supported the tree ordinance, and we hope today that the council will take the same position. That's all. And you know, Lake West, again, we're not saying you shouldn't develop. We're just saying, you know, do it in a way that preserves our cul-de-sac. That's all. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Is there anyone else? Welcome. Good evening. Sorry I had to sit around so long.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and City staff, Lake West Development. My name is Jane Polanski, and I live at 2452 Emerald Trail. And I would like to just discuss a couple of things. One is, as Ash mentioned, there has been no traffic study. We have a lot of concern regarding our kids playing on the cul-de-sac, biking, walking. There are no sidewalks, and we have a lot of foot traffic, bicycle traffic, skateboarders, people walking their dogs. And so we are very concerned about Emerald Trail being continued through to the new development. There's a lot of controversy regarding the county's position on access to this new development via Plymouth Road, and we think that needs to be clarified because there have been multiple propositions regarding that, and we feel a traffic study needs to be done to assess accessibility and mitigating the increased traffic that's going to happen at the intersection of Plymouth Road and Amy Lane, both with the current neighborhood that is there existing. It's very difficult already to access Plymouth Road, making a left or right turn, but in particular a left turn out of the neighborhood, because there is a hill coming from the north, coming south, that makes it very difficult to see traffic as it is currently. If a development for Woodhaven is going in across Amy Lane, that's going to increase the pressure. And I noticed that there was an email from Ashley Morello, the county planning person, to Susan Thomas that got put in the packet from the Planning Commission agenda packet. And she, to quote her, said, regarding the consideration of access to Amy Lane, we know that site distance is tricky at this location as well. We are seeing a lot of potential additional pressure on this intersection of Plymouth Road and Amy Lane from this proposal, as well as the development on the west side of Plymouth Road. If an approved proposal for this site includes access to Amy Lane, city and county staff may need to discuss options to add turn lanes. Now, I know one of the objections was a turn lane onto the northern axis of this new development, but you're not getting out of the issue of turn lanes if you have access at Amy Lane. So there's been significantly more development since the 1995 proposal to put Emerald Trail extended into this new development, which has increased the pressure. And Mayor, you mentioned that earlier that if it's important enough, you need to measure it. And so I conducted my own informal traffic study on January 23rd, 24, 1 hour, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m., just to measure what the traffic load was, just the volume. And there were 359 cars that went northbound at the intersection of Amy Lane and Plymouth Road. And southbound traffic through that intersection was 422 cars. There was one bus stop that occurred at 4:30, and that caused a 10-car backup on that road. And there were 4 vehicles that entered our neighborhood at Amy Lane to access Emerald Trail, and 5 cars that went out of it. Traffic studies are really important in terms of not only the volume of cars going through that intersection in particular, that's going to be increased with the 2 developments, both Emerald Estates and Woodhaven, but it's also about speed and safety. A radar speed study would be important to assess what cars are actually traveling at. It's a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit posted on Plymouth Road, but people go much faster than that, 40 to 45 miles per hour. And so that would be important to study, as well as the sight lines for that intersection. This development, plus the proposed development across the street, are going to be very tricky, as mentioned by Ashley Morello in her email. That may create a very dangerous situation if both of those developments feed onto that one intersection. And so there has been no traffic consultant as part of this development. And so I would hope to suggest that there would be a traffic study, a more formal traffic study to assess the safety of this intersection. And regarding the trees, that's one of the main reasons we moved to Minnetonka. We love the trees. Our whole backyard is a conservation easement area, both for tree preservation as well as flood mitigation. We have a retention pond and a drainage site that goes through our backyard. And we love the trees. That's so important to us to preserve them. We also do solar, and we're one of those homes that's in that count from last year. And despite that, I would ask everyone to consider, ultimately, we preserve our trees, we value our trees, but we also value our children and citizens of Minnetonka. And we're very concerned about the safety of Emerald Trail for both children that use it to play and ride their bikes, as well as access of us adults and teenage drivers driving through Emerald Trail to Amy Lane and accessing Plymouth Road. So in summary, I would hope and suggest a more formal traffic study to look at volume, speed, sight lines, and to assess accessibility on the county road to this development to help mitigate the traffic pressures at that intersection. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polanski. All right, we don't applaud. So, are there any other comments, or are we good? All right. Well, I'll bring it back to the, would you? Sure, you may, yes, briefly.
Yes, thank you. Would it be possible to put the presentation back onto the screen just briefly? I just wanted to clarify a couple points, if that's okay. Thank you. So I just think that there might have been a question, I forgot who asked it, but about the southern spur and about the WP8 area.
Yes.
So this was the WP area outlined in the black dotted line and highlighted in that tan color when we came forth with this proposal on the screen. That later was redefined. I think the week of our planning commission meeting, we got a note from staff that this area was redefined. And so what that did was it juts in a little bit and creates a skinnier portion of the WP8 area. I'll use the cursor to show you this area. I don't have the grading plan, unfortunately, on this presentation to show you, But what I think was being referred to about the southern spur is even though we're not removing a portion of these trees, city staff was calculating this entire southern spur as being disturbed as a part of the WPA area, because calculating trees within the WPA area is based off of like actual area calculation, not the trees, if you're following this. So I think what was being mentioned was that they're counting this whole leg as removal of the WPA area, but we're not proposing to remove all of these trees. So then would those trees go back into the calculations of high priority and significant trees outside of the WPA area? So just wanted to address that. I don't remember who asked the question, but
I think that was Councilmember Wilburn.
yeah, okay. So that's where Mr. Niblick was explaining about the trees then would go into savings versus just being counted as removal. Another point I just wanted to quickly touch on. So just a reminder that yes, we're reviewing an application tonight that involves all 4 of these parcels, all 11.5 acres of this site. But, originally when we came forth with our concept review, we only had control over the 2 parcels, the Dutica parcels. That was the issue with the access being vacated, the Burlwood Road access, which is why we acquired the parcels to the north. Was really we were buying access to use either Woodbridge Trail or Emerald Trail. So that comes at a cost, right? So if we were to go down to a lot count of, let's just say like 11 or 12 or whatever it is, it doesn't really make sense to buy those northern properties to gain access when we can come in off of Plymouth Road through the middle of the WPA area, decreasing in density, and just going to bigger lots. That allows us to go into the WPA area, since we wouldn't need to follow the tree ordinance would not apply. Does that make sense? Are you following kind of that rationale? So that's how that kind of applies there. Do you have any other questions for me? I felt like staff was kind of taking a lot of the questions from you all, and I just want, while I'm up here.
Does Lake West own all of these properties?
All the properties are under control of Lake West,
but not owned.
Doesn't own.
So none of them have been purchased?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, that's an important clarification, because right now it's you've got rights to them, but you don't own them at this juncture.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
Very good. That's a good clarification. Council, any last questions? Otherwise, Councilor Wilburn?
You're going to be tired when you get on your plane. So.
I am, but that's that's comes with the territory.
The tree that confused me. What she just said. So can you tell me, like, how are the trees counted when we're doing the tree inventory and talking about which trees are affected and will be removed?
Yeah,
Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Wilburn. The tree ordinance requires under the WPA that the WPA be contiguous and connected, and so the disconnection of that creates, not WPA area. That still doesn't remove the trees that are in that former area from tree counts. Those are always there. So again, our natural resources staff has reviewed this. We're sticking by our staff report and the numbers that are contained within it. Absent that WPA discussion, there's still a high priority and significant tree exceedance for the subdivision.
Right. So to be sure I understand correctly, so anything that's inside the dotted black line is considered WPA, and so the amount of trees allowed to be removed fall under the WPA, and then anything outside of that, not WPA, but you still count the trees.
Yeah, the trees, there's an area standard for the WPA, and then there's a tree count that applies excuse me, broadly to the site. That's both in and outside of WPA.
I think just
Thank you.
but that's what I was going to say, Lauren, that you can't look at them in isolation. You have to look at the acreage of the WPA, and you have to look at the total loss of trees on the site, and they're not synonymous, right? So if you look at if you can pull up the chart that you had before, the staff presentation. Again, this is the chart for compliance with the ordinance. And I think the way the applicant is describing it is a little confusing. So this is what I would use to make your decision.
Councilmember O'Malley, did you have a question or a comment or question, I think?
I think, just confirm, I think you answered it. So, just because of the cutoff, the separation, that's why the area was decreased, because it has to be contiguous. But the trees in that non-contiguous spur are still counted in the overall. Got it. Thank you.
Very good. Council, anything else? And did you have any other last comment?
I don't think I have any last comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think we'll bring it back to the council. We have a decision to make. Let's see. Let's start our comments. Also, I want to say that we're missing one council member tonight, and Councilmember Shack, it pains her to not be here because this property is in her ward, and she had a long planned family vacation that takes her to a place somewhat warmer than Minnetonka even this year, and so she wrote an email to Mike and me, and I thought I would share that because she wants her views represented. So I'm just going to read it without commentary. So she wrote, I watched the Planning Commission meeting and reviewed the packet. I want to thank the neighbors for their engagement in this process and their thoughtful comments at the Planning Commission meeting and through the concept plan process. Their input has been helpful and in many ways made the proposed project better. I appreciate some of the changes and adjustments the applicant made since December when the project was previously scheduled before the Planning Commission. While I'd prefer a project with access from Plymouth Road, that issue really isn't before the council tonight and has not factored into my feedback. I fully support the staff's recommendation to deny the application. Nothing I heard at the Planning Commission or reviewed in the packet provides me with a compelling reason to suggest that this council should approve tree ordinance variances this significant. I would not vote in favor of this project. I also want to mention that I am extremely disappointed by the applicant's threat of a different project that would decimate the WPA, suggesting that making this presentation was simply an attempt at full transparency feels disingenuous. While, of course, I worry about the prospect of destroying the WPA, we should not be threatened by that prospect into proving a different project that still requires major variances. This is really a disappointing approach, particularly from a developer committed to the continued development in Minnetonka. It would behoove the developer to review the history of city surveys and get renewed understanding of what a valuable resource and amenity trees are to our current and future residents. Thank you, Rebecca. So I share that from Councilmember Shack. So, and perhaps that's a good way to tee off any comments that we have. Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo everything that my colleague, Councilmember Shack, said. I too appreciate the engagement by the neighborhood. It did make it better. I appreciated the work, to make this project better, and it doesn't go unnoticed by me that this is the larger properties in Minnetonka that remain are the properties that are hard to develop, and that there are difficulties, but they are not insurmountable difficulties. And I also want to acknowledge that having been on the Planning Commission and for several years, and now the City Council for 6 years, they don't make recommendations to deny lightly. So they don't relish it, and neither do I. But I agree with everything that Councilmember Shack said, and I was so shocked at the tenor of some of the comments made to the Planning Commission by the developer that basically did sound like a threat. And I actually had a conversation with the daughter of the previous owner and Mr. Fretham many, many months ago, where, you know, that kind of my way or the highway, you know, we can just take out the trees if we, you know, do this. It just doesn't make me feel inclined to, you know, look past things that might make me uncomfortable. I too wish we could have, you know, different access. That is not what we're voting on. And, you know, I actually think over time we have communicative, brilliant, creative, hardworking staff. I think access issues will be addressed. I really appreciate the comments about traffic. I'm on Plymouth Road all the time. I'm very familiar with that general area and the access issues, the safety issues, and I agree that, you know, making sure that we're keeping pedestrians, cyclists, and people in cars safe is very important. As regards the comment about loss of a right-of-way, you know, decades ago, that's a decision that was made at another time by other staff and other council members, and I am not about to exacerbate issues that were made by other, you know, in another era. And I just, you know, as regard, there are many challenges here. This is really close. I think we could get to an approval with some changes. I don't think it's this kind of binary choice that we were given tonight of, you know, mowing down all the trees and having 8 homes, or having exactly this proposal. And so I think it's clear that I am, you know, I think you've met a lot of you removed a lot of the variances, and I really appreciate the hard work that it took to get there. And I was so hot, really upset about the tenor of these comments about, you know, we could just do this, which one of the commissioners referred to as the nuclear option. Just really takes me aback that it was hard for me to even acknowledge that, yeah, they really worked hard. And, you know, the setbacks, the floodplain, and the lot areas and so on and so forth. So I appreciate the good work that went into that, and I'm a big enough person to acknowledge that, but it was really hard for me to say that tonight because the rest of it just really bothered me. And it's not the first time. Mr. Fretham's come before this body several times asking to cut down trees with no, you know, on spec homes, basically, so that they could better envision what the property would look like without trees. And again, you know, we have these ordinances because they reflect the values of the people in the community, and trees are among the highest valued qualities. Tree-lined streets is what people want. And the Dudicas were blessed to live on this property for a long, long time, surrounded by nature. And, you know, I am in favor of development, but sensible development that meets our ordinances so that it reflects the values of our community. So it's a no for me tonight.
Councilmember Wilburn?
So I concur with my colleagues. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my reaction to the threatening language, but could we go back to the slide on practical difficulty? So there seems to be a disagreement on what constitute practical difficulties. Obviously, the staff has stated that there is not a practical difficulty. Developer feels that there is. There's no question that this is a difficult property, otherwise it would have already been developed. And you know that it's always been a difficult property. But, and you know, when the points were being made, I was thinking, well, yes, that's true. That is difficulty. That is difficult. It is not the fault of the landowner that, you know, some of the topography and challenges. However, if just having your property be unique, every property is different, so every property would meet the practical difficulty requirement if that was all it took. So again, you know, I haven't been a council member that long. This is my 3rd year, so I haven't had as much experience as some of my colleagues, but I'm trusting staff on this one when they say that no, this doesn't count as practical difficulty.
Thank you, Councilor Wilburn. Anyone else? Councilor Romali?
Yes, I'll echo all of comments made thus far. I am also even newer, 1 month instead of 3 years. And I do look to staff and also the Planning Commission in making these decisions. However, at the same time, not having had the history and such before, I do hope the developer will think carefully and, you know, come back with something that comes closer, you know, gets us to the tree ordinance. I'd hate to see, you know, that land get redeveloped and have the trees taken away because of any, you know, issues here tonight or in general. So I would just encourage the developer, if you go ahead and decide to pursue this further, you know, to do something that is more in accordance and brings you closer. I understand that, you know, obviously you need to make some sort of profit, but, you know, I would ask you to go back to the drawing board in good faith with us and work with staff and try to come up with something that helps get us closer or meet the tree ordinance needs, meets your needs, and is also smart and responsible development and redevelopment for Minnetonka. Thanks. But I will be voting to deny.
Very good. So any other comments? All right. Well, in the interest of time, we'll keep moving forward. Just a couple of comments. You know, this piece of property, it looks like we're going to deny this tonight. This property is not going to go away, and Lake West Development is not going to go away. And well, you know, I found that the talk about the easement, excuse me, that happened in 1995. And I remember the night we passed our latest tree ordinance. I made the comment, well, we just made development more expensive in Minnetonka. And we did. We did. I mean, the tree ordinance is not an insignificant impediment to get over for a developer. But it is clearly reflective of community values. We have a 58% tree canopy in Minnetonka which is the highest in the metro, because people value trees. And trees are important to the identity. The natural environment is talked about in what we talked about earlier tonight in terms of our core values and our strategic plan. So the tree ordinance is a meaningful hurdle, but it is not a wall that cannot be overcome. And, you know, had, you know, the talk about the easement vacation in 1995, if we were developing based upon 1995 rules, well, it would already be developed.
Yeah.
So 1995 is in the past, and it's not really relevant. What's relevant is the laws that we as a council are required to uphold, and that's our tree ordinance. Now, that doesn't mean we never allow variances, and we never ignore, or we always ignore the challenges facing a property. We understand practical difficulties, but we also know that we have objective criteria that we as a council value. And so I too am going to support the staff recommendation. I think it's valid. I think there is a path forward, and the path forward may be one unit per acre. And if it is, I'm pretty confident that they're not going to turn it into a garden with no trees. I'm pretty confident that's not going to happen. I am not daunted. That may have been a threat. It wasn't a threat to me, because trees are valued in our community. So if we end up with a development that is one home per acre, so be it. But I think there's other paths, and I think through creativity, staff and the developer will develop a different concept going forward. But I will admit that we're talking dollars and cents. The developer doesn't own this property. He has an interest in it. Chances are the seller will get less with less density. Chances are, because I think that's the way the economics work. So by denying this tonight, we're probably taking money out of the property owner's pocket. But our job is not to maximize the value of a property owner's or make a developer's numbers. Our job is to protect the values of our community. So I'm going to vote no. I don't think this is the last we've heard of this tonight, but I think we also have to understand what exactly is happening here when we deny this proposal. So those are my comments. If someone would like to make a motion. Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make the motion to approve the resolution denying the preliminary plat of Emerald Estates with floodplain alteration permit and tree removal variances.
Is there a second? Councilmember Foster Bolton.
I second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Foster Bolton. Ms. England, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romalee,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Weersum.
Yes, motion carries. Item 15 is appointments and reappointments, and 15A is an Economic Development Advisory Commission, EDAC, Chair and Vice Chair appointments. And Mr. Funk, I believe you've taken that report.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Real quick for this evening's last agenda item, Resolution 2010-50 states that the chair and vice chair of the EDAC will be appointed by the mayor annually with confirmation by the council. And for tonight's purposes, staff is recommending Lee Jacobson as the chair and Ann Dedinsky-Sabuka as the vice chair of the EDAC. So with that, Mayor and Council, I know it's a very short report. We do need your motion to appoint our chair and vice chair of the EDAC, and what we're looking for is a motion to appoint those two individuals.
Councilmember Wilburn.
I move that we appoint the two individuals listed by our city manager.
Thank you. And Councilmember Romalee.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Wilburn and a second by Councilmember Romalee. Ms. England, please call roll.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Romalee,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Weersum.
Yes, motion carries. Final item on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion, Councilmember Wilburn?
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Councilmember Calvert. So we've got a motion by Councilmember Wilburn, a second by Councilmember Calvert. Ms. England, no, all in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
You're getting in a plane?